can read it for us.
So Goethe student pledge. Student. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge,
Responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners often take risks, empathy creates community.
So these are the very short abbreviation of these sentences is neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, risikofreudig, empathisch.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with roll. Frank?
Present.
Pete is absent, but may.
Can you hold on 1 second for me to come, because if I record this, then I'm not.
No problem, we'll wait. We forgot.
Distribute them now.
I haven't done it. I just realized I have no idea what my
They put them in the bag. Actually, I had to Friday, and I had to find my person.
Yeah, like who knows where it is? So now I'm trying to figure out how to order one.
Your passport will be done.
But
Yeah, I was just saying, is the passport also?
I should have birth certificate though.
Yeah.
I realized that if you're born in the city of New York, which I was, since the state of New York, it's harder to get a birth certificate. Birth certificate.
518.
Wait, like a birth certificate and your original social security card.
I have not quite tried.
If I just found my birth certificate,
So
I'll
Frank?
together by
Present.
Pete may be here in 45 minutes. Margie is absent. Danielle here. And I'm here. Right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
A second.
I would just like to point out that there are a couple of things that we may revise on the agenda. The handbook, I don't think we're ready to present because it went to legal. Is that correct?
So I would ask that we table it.
Correct. And then I would like to ask in the Finance Committee portion, just to talk about the plan regarding setting up the budget for 2020, 2019, whatever, but it's just a discussion. If that's okay?
Yep.
All in favor?
All in favor.
Aye. Okay.
Like this, just so we have a little less.
Thank you. With that being said, I will hand this off to Mr. Wayne Stumfer from Young and Minnie sorry. There you go. And you are in charge, sir.
All right. Okay, well, good evening. Small crowd.
Wayne, you might need to speak up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yes. Good evening. I'm Wayne Strumper. I'm with Young Minnie Corps, and I'm here to give you a little Brown Act training. We'll go over the main points of it. Try to do that in about 45 minutes. Make sure what I'm going to try to do is keep you out of trouble. Let's talk a little bit about the new law. There's Education Code 47604.1, which came about this past year. Back in the last December, right after Christmas, the Attorney General's office came out with an opinion saying that charter schools had to follow the Brown Act, conflict of interest laws, the Public Records Act, all those things. And it had been a question mark for some schools. Most schools have followed it, but it always been a question mark because it's not in the Charter School Act. But the Attorney General in late last year said, yes, charter schools have to follow these laws. Following that, the legislature and the governor passed and signed a bill putting that into effect. It also did a couple of other things. It also tells you where you can have your board meetings. All right. Previously, under the Brown Act, it was in the jurisdiction of your charter school. And some people question that. Was that the authorizer's district? Was that the county? Or in some cases, was that the state of California? Because the Charter School Act actually is for the whole state of California. This law makes it very clear that, especially for your school, it's very easy. At your school, your jurisdiction is your county. So anywhere in Los Angeles County, you can have a board meeting. So if you want to have a retreat somewhere else, you can do it, but it has to be in Los Angeles County. If you have people calling in for a board meeting, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but if you have the teleconferencing, you just have to make sure you have a majority of your board in Los Angeles County when you do that. Okay? If you would have a second school site, you would need to do teleconferencing, and there's different rules for that, but you guys have the one school site, so we don't have that issue. But if you ever expand, there'd be additional requirements. The other thing that this code section now allows for expressly is that employees can be on board. Still, under the corporations code, it can't be a majority of people, it has to be a minority of members. But it can be one or two board members can be employees of the school. Under this new law, it says it's okay, but it says that those people cannot vote, and it's very specific, so they cannot vote on matters uniquely affecting their members' employment, all right? And we don't know exactly what that means, right? Because the question would be, if you were a teacher, would voting on the budget uniquely affect your employment, right? It might, because under certain situations, how you vote on a budget or what you vote for money to go to could affect you personally. It's really a big question mark, so we still make the recommendation not to have employees on board members, as board members, mainly because it's just for conflicts of interest. It's a little bit of a minefield still, for the time being, until things are maybe a little clearer. All right, with that, we'll talk about the Brown Act. So the purpose of the Brown Act is this: you work for a public school, you're a board member, you teach students at public schools, you accept public funds, you spend public funds, therefore the public has a right to know what you're doing. Not only how you vote, but what you think, right? So your discussion and your vote have to be public. What we're going to talk about tonight, the roadmap, is this. We're going to talk about what a meeting is, because that's the key. Probably where the Brown Act is most commonly violated is when a meeting occurs, especially when you just have a 5-member board. We're also going to talk about what's required for notices and agendas. We're going to talk about what the rights of the public are when the public attends your meeting. We'll talk about when you can have a private meeting, right? When you can kick the public out and have closed session. There are certain times where the law allows you to do that, and also what happens if you do violate the Brown Act. A mistake can happen, and you can violate the Brown Act. The positive thing is that it's a law that is easily corrected. It's an easy cure. It's not something you want to do often, obviously, but if you do make a mistake and violate the Brown Act, it is curable. Okay? So first off, for meetings, okay? Meetings are when a majority of the board are together and in some fashion are discussing school business, okay? So if, let's say, the 3 of you happen to be outside in the parking lot after a board meeting is over, you should not be talking about school business. Because if you start talking about school business out there, you have not noticed that. It's not on the agenda. It doesn't say, 6:45 you're going to be out in the parking lot, right? On the other hand, if you are, 2 of you get together to have coffee, talk about the agenda or an item on the agenda for next week. If you want to meet at Starbucks and talk about the budget or whatever's going on at school, you can do that. 2 of you can do that as long as you have 5 members on the board, right? You don't have a majority. So that's the key aspect, and there's a couple of different kind of twists to it that we'll talk about tonight when we talk about a majority talking about school business.
Can I ask a question? If we have 6 members of the board, is 3 the majority or 4?
4.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you guys have board committees? Okay. So your board committees, except for one exception, board committees have to also follow the Brown Act, right? So they have to notice their meetings and they have to follow the Brown Act in public. The exception is this: when you decide to create a temporary advisory committee that's composed only of board members and a minority of board members, and you then could have that committee without following the Brown Act. I'll give you an example. Let's say that there is a parent who comes to a board meeting and says, I think there's a problem with your snack bar. Your you know, the food isn't correct, or whatever the case may be, right? Some problem with the snack bar. And the board decides, you know what, we'd like to at least look into this, get a little bit more information. You could appoint 2 members of your 5-member board for a temporary committee to come back next month and advise the board about the snack bar. Right? You could do that. Those 2 members could meet and could investigate without following the Brown Act. Right? That's the only exception. Anytime if you put a parent or you put an employee on the committee, or if you have a majority of board members on the committee, you have to follow the Brown Act. And there's only that one exception. The majority of the board can do other things, you just have to be careful. So for instance, if LAUSD has your charter up for renewal, right? It's up for renewal, and a majority of the board wants to go to that board meeting, right? You can do that. And you can even speak in public comment. Now, some people would say, well, wait a minute, right? Because you got a majority of the board and you're talking about school business at a function. But in that situation, you can piggyback off of LAUSD, who hopefully has properly noticed and agendized the meeting, right? So you don't have to do that yourself. It can be done by LAUSD. I sometimes call this sort of the antisocial law, because let's say you go to a wedding and one of you gets married, or one of your kids gets married, and you invite the board to go to the wedding. That's not a problem necessarily. Or if you go to graduation, school's graduation, or a fundraising event, it's okay for all of you to go. You just want to keep your distance from each other, right? You don't want to have a majority of you in that place talking about school business. Otherwise, you should have it on an agenda, and you should notice it under the Brown Act. Okay. So, for instance, if all 5 of you go to a wedding, I would just say don't sit next to each other at the reception. Right. Find different tables to sit next to, because if 3 of you are at that one table, what do you have in common? You're going to have school in common, right? So chances are you may talk about school business and you could violate the Brown Act. So just be careful of those kinds of things. Serial meetings is the other problem that we see sometimes, and that is this. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's what we call the hub and then the chain, and I'll talk about the chain first. So let's say that the 2 of you meet to talk about, the budget's on the agenda for next week, okay? And the 2 of you go and meet at Starbucks to talk about it. Not a problem, right? 2 out of 5, you're fine. But let's say that Frank leaves that meeting and thinks, I'm still not sure how I feel about a couple items on the budget. I think I want to talk to Danielle about it. So then Frank goes to Danielle and says, hey, we met earlier, and I'd like to get, we were thinking this, I'd like to get your opinion on it. That's called a serial meeting. It's like a chain where, you bring somebody else into the meeting, but you've already had another conversation, right? So now 3 of you, even though only 2 of you are there, 3 of you are involved in that meeting. And that can be a violation of the Brown Act. So you want to be very careful about talking to different people on the board about the same issue, right? The other problem that we see more of is what we call the hub. And this is, for instance, let's say you're going to email somebody, right? If you want to email the board something about school business, you want to make sure you give it to your chief administrator to send out to the board, right? Because in this situation, these are each board members. You don't as a board member want to be in the middle there, okay? Because what is that? If you email all the board members, you were talking about school business to a majority of the board, right? So you don't want to do that. Plus, if you get something sent out to you by your chief administrator, you don't want to reply all back.
What we do is I do blind CC
Perfect.
to everyone.
I was going to bring that up.
That's how we've done it.
Yes.
It's worked really well.
Yeah, I learned that about a year ago. And somebody said, oh yeah, you just BCC everyone. They can't respond all. So that's great. That's great. Because that's an easy mistake to make, and it's a Brown Act violation if you do it. And if you think sometimes, well, it's an email, who will find out? Your emails are public record, right? Under the court decision, there's a Supreme Court decision a couple of years ago that said not only are your school emails public record, but even your private emails, if you're talking about school business as a board member, those are public record. And we saw this a couple summers ago, where there were requests for a number of charter schools for all emails between board members. And what was the requester looking for? The requester was looking for Brown Act violations. How often were there emails between board members that was a majority of the board? So you do need to be careful about that kind of thing. Same thing with text messages. Don't have a group text situation. Make sure you don't do that. And if you do text each other, again, make sure you're not doing a serial type texting where you're texting one and then another about the same issue. Right? The other issue that comes up occasionally now, more and more, are like Facebook posts. Right? We had a client who, a disgruntled parent, put a Facebook post on Facebook that was sort of negative about a teacher and about a class. And 4 of the 5 board members responded by defending the class and the teacher on the Facebook. And the disgruntled parent then complained that that was a violation of the Brown Act because 4 of the 5 board members had posted and talked about school on the same Facebook page. Right? That authorizer did not find that to be a Brown Act violation, but it is worrisome, right? Some might. So you want to be careful with any kind of social media, things where you would post or like or that kind of thing. Be careful with a majority of the board being involved in those things, okay? One-way communication, you can talk to Chris, no problem, right? Anytime, he can talk to each one of you, right, at any time, but of course he's not going to say that, well, I spoke to Danielle and she said this, but he can certainly talk to each one of you, and anything you have questions about is totally fine. I used to work at a very small board. When I worked for the state, I worked at the Victims' Compensation Board. We had a 3-member board. And one of the things we did was we gave money to people who were wrongfully convicted of crimes who went to prison. And we gave $100 a day for people who were been in prison wrongfully convicted. And those cases were always difficult because the person had been convicted, but then they'd been found, to be innocent. And we had 2 board members who fought all the time about those cases. We had one person who was a district attorney who didn't believe the person every time and didn't want to give them the money. And we had another person on the board every single time she wanted to give the money to the person. And they would call me the day before the board meeting. And it was totally fine for them, of course, to talk to me and ask me questions. I was the chief counsel, so I could talk to them about it. But almost every time they would ask me, what was the other one going to vote on this one? Right? They would do it almost every time. Every time I had to say, I can't tell you, right? I can't tell you because then it's 2 out of 3. It's a Brown Act violation, right? So you can have a conversation with Chris, but he can't talk to you about whether people are voting or whether people are thinking.
What about an individual board member to an individual board member?
It's okay as long as it's just 2, right? Yeah, with 5 people, any more than 2, then you've got a problem. But one-on-one is okay. Teleconferencing. Do you guys ever teleconference? Okay. A couple things on teleconferencing. There are 6 rules now on teleconferencing. They're all pretty straightforward. One is, wherever you're going to teleconference from, you must post the agenda at that location. All right? So let's say you are on vacation for the week, but you want to attend a board meeting because it's an important meeting, but you're on vacation, you're going to go on vacation. That's fine. If you're in Hawaii, you can still attend the board meeting by phone. But at the Waikoloa Hilton, or wherever you're staying, you would have to post the agenda there, okay? If you're teleconferencing from work, you will need to post the agenda at your workplace, somewhere outside where people can see it, right? And the opposite is true also. On the agenda itself, it needs to have the location of the teleconferencing, right? So you would put your school address, and then you would have teleconference location, the Waikoloa Hilton, or whatever address that you're at, okay? You have to make sure that all, oops, yeah.
What if you're home?
The same thing. You would have to put your home address on the agenda, and at home you would have to post the agenda for the 3 days before regular meeting.
And you would also have to accept members of the public into your house if you're using that as a
We
public
are about to get there, which is why no, that's fine. There are many reasons why I do not recommend teleconferencing from home. First off, you don't want to put your home address on a public document, which you would have to do on the agenda. Okay? The second one is, we'll talk about it in a second, it's exactly what you said. So, first off, you have to put the agenda up and the address has to be on the agenda. All votes have to be by roll call. That makes sense because you can't see a hand on the phone. The location must be accessible to the public. So if you have an office building where you work and you're going to teleconference, if it closes its doors at 5 o'clock, you can't teleconference there. Or you have to have somebody that can open up that door so that's public, so people can come in. Okay. It also has to be ADA compliant, so if you're staying at a resort that is, up a rock and steps and whatever, on a beach somewhere, you cannot teleconference from that location. They have to be ADA compliant. Members of the public must be able to come in and listen and also be able to participate in the board meeting. So this is where we go from, if you're at the Waikoloa Hilton or at your house, 5 minutes before the board meeting, someone knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I just saw this agenda. This looks pretty interesting. I'd like to listen." You have to let them into your house or your hotel room, as the case may be, right? So wherever you're teleconferencing from or your office, you have to make it accessible to the public if they were to come. Finally, a quorum has to be in Los Angeles County. All right, we kind of go back to the earlier new law. You can have all 5 of you teleconference if you want, same meeting, not a problem. But 3 of you at least have to be teleconferencing from LA County. All right. If you cannot get a quorum in your jurisdiction, you cannot have a board meeting. Yes.
Brown, so we have had meetings. We allowed meetings where board members were outside of the country.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't appear to me that these would check all the check marks here.
Well, if it depends. A majority of the board was from out of the country or out of the country at the time?
No, the board was present, but a member was outside.
Okay, so let's say you want to go, you're in France or you're in Germany. As long as the address of where you're located is posted on the agenda,
Right.
and as long as you put the agenda up wherever you are,
Okay. But
right?
how do I check ADA compliant?
In Europe, that's difficult sometimes, right?
Because it's a specific law applying to the United States.
Yeah, that's
Ditto is
that's
also
interesting.
in regards to can the public reasonably go to that location?
Well, but I think that is where it doesn't limit you where you can be. So you could be in Europe, but in Europe you have to be someplace where the public you can't be in a locked up private place. You have to be in a public area. The question about ADA compliant, you're on a board in the United States, so that law is saying you have to be ADA compliant even though Europe doesn't have ADA. So you would need to check that and make sure, does the hotel have an elevator? Does the hotel have ramps? Wherever you are, you have to make that call. I think you're probably okay as long as you do that and you make that effort. But I also, as an attorney, my job is to keep you out of trouble and keep you from getting complaints. If there's any question at all, miss the board meeting.
Right. So because we have had in the past, prior board was allowing to have members participate outside of the country. Many boards before, there was a rule we said no, we couldn't.
Mm-hmm. There's not a problem with a rule saying you can't.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily legally, it isn't, I'm not legally going to tell you can't,
Right.
but I think there are issues. I think you're right. There are problems with teleconferencing from outside the country.
Yeah.
So if you decide to make that a rule, you certainly can do that to avoid any problems. So that's my thought on that. I think it could be done under the Brown Act, but if there's concerns or you're not sure, you definitely should not. And this is one thing that I learned a long time ago. I was on a board one time, and I tried to do everything I could to be at the board meeting, teleconferencing. And the chair just said to me, you know what? You don't have to be here, right? We can make it without you for one board meeting. So remember that too. If you're on a vacation or if it's really difficult to get to, or you're not sure you're complying with the Brown Act, better not to be part of the meeting, right, and miss a meeting than it is to violate the Brown Act.
I have a question. If you're at a hotel, does posting on your hotel room door suffice, or does it have to be in the lobby?
No, I think as long as it's in a public area where people can see,
Okay.
so you're okay.
It's in the lobby, people gonna walk by. you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
lobby I think is the best place, but it depends on the way the hotel is set up. I think it would be okay if you post, you know, if it's, I always think of DoubleTrees that kind of just go around like this, right? They've got I think you can post, as long as you post it outside your door, because that's where the meeting is going to be, I think that's okay.
And then one more question, if say we had a meeting, right, and then later on found out somebody wasn't Brown Act compliant when they were teleconferencing in, does that make the meeting void, or what, is there something that?
Yeah, so under the Brown Act, there's sort of a statute of limitations for mistakes, and it's either 3 or 4 months. So for instance, if your authorizer comes to you in a year and says, hey, a year ago, you made this mistake in the Brown Act, there's nothing that can be done, right? They can't do that, basically. And they can't hold you to it. They have to discover the problem within 3 to 4 months. So the reason I say that is if no one complains to you, right, then it's not a Brown Act violation, it has to be corrected because no one complained about it. Now, if the board itself finds, you know, for instance, you realize, oh, you know what, I violated the Brown Act, and I need to let the board know that, right? Then what you would want to do is cure any violation that happened. We'll talk about how to do that later. Okay. So executive compensation. So when you're chief administrator, you either hire a new one, or if you have a new contract with your chief administrator, or if you add benefits or a pay raise, or provide anything that increases the benefits for your directors. You want to make sure you do that in a public meeting, in a regular public meeting. Don't call a special meeting for it. It has to be a regular meeting, and it has to be done in public. This came out of a case you may remember maybe 10 years ago in the city of Bell, which is down Port Orange, when a city manager who was making about $100,000 a year decided to give himself a raise to like $700,000 in his last year before he retired, and then he took the CalPERS retirement, thought he had it made until CalPERS caught him, and he went to prison, and the legislature created this rule, which was for government bodies, that when the chief administrator is going to get a raise, it has to be done in public. Right? You can't privately do it. So you couldn't scheme and decide to give Chris, you know, $100,000 more a year. Or Chris couldn't obviously scheme to do that. That's the idea behind this law. So anytime there is a new contract or a raise, it has to be done by the board in open session, and you have to announce that amount of the raise. If you're giving, you know, a 5%, 3% raise, whatever it is, it has to be announced at a regular board meeting. So notice requirements with agendas. You have to include a brief description.
So again, so just the final action has to be done. The payroll discussion can be done in closed session as we've done in the past. Only the action taken has to be reported out.
That is correct. You can evaluate in closed session, right? Employment, evaluate in closed session.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be announced in public.
Yeah.
For agenda items, sometimes people will ask, well, do I need, you know, how much do I need to put in for each agenda item? And my general rule is this, is consider someone who knows nothing about your school, is reading your agenda. Is there enough there for them to understand what it is you're doing at the board meeting, right? So if it's budget is your agenda item, I'm looking at it, not knowing your school, going, well, I don't know if you're going to review last year's budget, or you're looking at the current budget, or you're looking at, I don't know, what budget are you talking about? But if you put discussion and vote on the 2019-2020 budget, now I know what you're talking about, what you're doing. So it doesn't take, you know, paragraphs. A lot of times it just takes a few words, usually less than 20 words, to be descriptive enough for people to understand what it is you're talking about. That's the idea, is for a person to be able to read it and say, oh, I want to attend that. I'm interested in what they're doing that night. So that's the idea of that law. Okay. A couple things you need to start putting on your agenda. One is you need to have a little blurb on how to request for disability-related accommodations. And the other one is a little blurb that if anybody wants to inspect the documents that go to the board ahead of time, there needs to be a little blurb saying you can pick them up at the front office, or you can call the front office to get the board documents.
It has to be on the agenda?
It does now, yes.
Yeah.
Both that and the request for disability-related accommodations. They're both fairly new regulations.
Okay. You notice, yeah.
So, yeah, you need to put those on.
Since when is that?
Last year, well, where are we, 2019? 2017, 2018. It's been about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the languages, do you have a blog for this?
I can send you one if you'd like. I can send you this
Yeah.
one. Yeah. I've looked at both of them. Okay, notices for regular meetings, 72 hours in advance. That's 3 days. That includes holidays, weekends, a calendar day. It doesn't matter. 72 hours or 72 hours. Special meetings, same thing, 24 hours. If you have an emergency meeting, which we strongly suggest you don't do emergency meetings because they're kind of fraught with possible Brown Act problems, it is 1 hour notice. And that would be, you don't want to have an emergency meeting, because when you would be able to have one legally is, for instance, if there's an act of God or something like that, like if the school burns down and you need to discuss what are we going to do with the school and we have to have an emergency meeting. That's the kind of thing that you can have an emergency meeting about. Typically, almost everything can wait 24 hours. So you want to have a special meeting if you can wait out 24 hours or something. Where to post, you need to post physically in a location around your school. You have gates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to, I don't know where you post. You want to post outside the
main
gate?
where the buzzer is.
Perfect. Yeah. That's a problem. Sometimes schools
And we do
post
it in the office.
within. Okay, yeah, as long as you're posting outside the gate, you're fine. That's what we see sometimes an issue, because it's gotta be, if I'm a member of the public, I need to be able to access it 24 hours a day for the 3 days before the regular meeting. Okay. It also obviously has to be posted at your teleconference location if you're teleconferencing, and then you've gotta put it on the website. A new law that just became effective this year is that on your website, it has to be on your home page, and it has to be a prominent direct link to the agenda on your home page. And I'm not sure, I didn't get a chance to look at your website, but make sure that for regular meetings and for special meetings, you have it right at the home page, and one click and you're on the agenda.
We have it through the calendar.
Okay.
On the
On the home page? Yeah, as long as it's a direct link to the agenda. What they're trying to do there is, I used to laugh about this with clients because they played a game of how many clicks until you get to the agenda, right? It'd be like, okay, governance, and then the board, and then board meetings, and then by the time you got to the agenda, it was 6 clicks. They're trying to eliminate that. They're trying to say, hey, you've got to have it prominent so people can see
So
it.
should it be one click? It's you click on agenda and then it pops up, or
It should be.
agenda and then the date? Is that
No,
acceptable? One
under
click.
the law, it's prominent and it has to be direct. So it's supposed to be click, like if you've got on the calendar, there's your calendar, you click on board meeting on what's the day, the 18th, and boom, the agenda should be there. Yeah.
So we can talk about it later, but it right now goes to a landing page that has another click to go on the PDF, but if you just have to change that link.
Yeah, that's on the new site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just trying to.
one layer, but it's
Yeah.
almost there.
Yeah.
It's much better than it was.
And it is, what I worry about is it's a little bit of a gotcha rule,
Uh-huh.
that if, your authorizer wants to make a thing of it, they can. So be careful in that. Notice requirement, the only time you can add something to the agenda again is if it's emergency, and again, we say be very careful about that. But, for instance, if it's something that comes up right before the board meeting, couldn't have been agendized, and it is something that absolutely has to be dealt with immediately, I can give you, there's not very many examples of this, but maybe one would be, let's say, a half hour before the board meeting, Chris announces he's quitting and moving to Tahiti, and he's doing it that day, all right? This is his last day, he's gone. You may need to add an item to your board meeting of who is going to run the school, right? At least for interim. That would be the kind of thing that, okay, it's an emergency. You gave us no notice, we're at the board meeting, the school needs to operate tomorrow, and they need to know who's going to run the school, okay? So you could vote by a 2/3 margin that it's an emergency and add that item to the board meeting agenda. Okay, but it's very, very rare where that's happened. I'm sure Chris will never retire with no notice and move to Tahiti. but in case you did, there is that.
So what's the workaround with the new business then?
What do you mean?
So we have an agenda, it's agenda, so you can change it, except for emergency. So let's say it doesn't qualify for emergency.
Yeah.
Agenda is posted. So then you have a board member, an individual board member wants to bring up certain other agenda points, you bring it up on a new business?
You cannot discuss new business. What you can do is you can say, if you want to put something on the board, on the agenda, you would say, I would like to talk about A and B on the agenda. Put it on next month's agenda.
Okay, but not for this meeting.
Can't be this meeting. Yeah, has to be, anything to discuss has to be in the agenda for this meeting. Now, if a member...
What's the point of new business then, if the agenda can be changed?
I'm not really sure how you guys use new business.
Look at the agenda. Item number 9.
How do you guys use it?
So, we have started to use it to bring up discussion items for the next board meeting.
Oh, okay.
So we don't vote on anything.
So
Something's
you don't
come
get
up.
it, that's exactly where you would say, I would like to talk about A. So I would like that on next month's board meeting. And then you guys can vote to do that, or however you put items on board. Some schools just say, hey, if one board member wants it on the agenda, you can do it, or sometimes it's majority of the board, however you guys work it. But that's where you would do that. But you would not actually have a substantial discussion about an item that's not on the agenda in that situation.
Right. So we had misuse of, we had the politicized agenda. This is all transparent, this is good. I'm not saying, that we
Yeah.
had instances where the agenda wasn't shared and nobody could make changes to the agenda.
Yeah, well, once the agenda is posted, there shouldn't be any
No.
changes.
Prior to get anything on the agenda. So the agenda was circulated, input was provided, didn't make it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Board members were asking what?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea, I don't know if you have it or not, but it's not a bad idea to have a board policy that you adopt for how you're going to decide the agenda. If you have it in writing, then you've got agreements, right? Is it gonna be a majority of the board? Is it gonna be any board member? Is it going to be, can Chris put something on the board agenda if he wants to, because it's something he thinks is important? So it's not a bad idea to put together a 1 or 2 page policy on how are we going to create an agenda if you don't have that.
We have an agenda setting
Okay.
policy. It's just, it wasn't necessarily followed.
That's the other part, right? You can have a policy, but if you don't execute it or follow it, that's a problem, right? So, yeah.
I gotta give a 5-minute warning.
Okay, I'm moving along. So right to the public, real quick. The public can give testimony. They can talk to the board. You cannot say only teachers or only parents can be here. Anybody can attend. If they are disruptive, you can ask them to leave or have them leave. But disruptive means that it has to be something that keeps you from doing business. Like if they continuously yell, or play music or something where you cannot conduct your business, you can kick them out. But if they simply, there was a court case where a kid gave a Nazi salute to a member of the board and they kicked him out, and the court said, no, that's not disruptive. That was rude, but it wasn't disruptive. They were still able to do business. So you have to, it has to be interruptive enough to where you cannot conduct your business. Let's see, I'll try to make this quick, it's only 5 minutes. You can limit people to 3 minutes, which I think you do, I think I saw on your agenda, 3 minutes and 30 minutes total. If the person needs an interpreter, you have to give them twice as much time, so 6 minutes. That's a new law that came into effect last year. Closed session. So, you pending anticipated litigation with legal counsel, which you have already around tonight, that can be closed session. Pupil discipline, education code allows that to be closed session. If the student or the student's parent want that in public session, they can change that to public session, but you can't. You have to keep it closed. Personnel, any kind of personnel issue can be in closed session. Remember that if it's about specific charges against an employee that you're going to discuss, you have to give that employee 24 hours notice that you're going to have that closed session meeting. about specific charges against that person, they can then request that be an open session, right? You can't, but they can, okay? It doesn't mean they have a right to go into closed session with you. When you give them notice and let them know that you're gonna talk about it. Doesn't mean that you have to invite them in, but what it does mean is if they say, hey, I know you're gonna talk about me and about specific charges against me, I want that in public. I want everybody to hear it, right? They have a right to do that.
And do you have to comply?
You do, yes, you have to have it in public session. If they request it, you have to have it in public session.
So we are actually going to start this year. The board's going to make sure that performance reviews are conducted for staff and teachers. In that case, obviously charges has got a negative connotation, and obviously there won't be directed charges, and those reviews actually won't exactly take place until the end of the year.
Yeah.
But we are going to have a conversation on the reviews are taking place. There will be highlights, obviously, of certain, right?
That's all closed session. That's
Perfect,
fine.
but do we
Yeah.
have to notify every teacher?
No, you
Yeah.
don't. The only time you have to notify a teacher is if,
I'm sorry, not teacher, staff.
or staff.
Yeah.
The only time you have to notify employees is if somebody files a specific complaint against them and you're gonna take that up. Right, that's when you have to let it happen, right? Real estate negotiation, if you have to lease or you deal with Prop 39, if there's some issue here, you can do that in closed session. Labor negotiations, if you're gonna deal with your whole employment group in a certain way, you can have those in closed session. And then last one's public security. If you want to create an active shooter procedure at the school, you can invite in local law enforcement to help you create that policy if you want to. You can do that in closed session. The safe harbor language, which you have, it's in the government code. It tells you exactly what to put in your agenda. So it's Brown Act compliant. It works every time. You just post it from the law over to your agenda. Before you go into closed session, you got to make sure you make a public announcement of the reason you're going into closed session. Usually you just read what's on the agenda and you're fine. The public has an opportunity to comment on closed session items beforehand. And then after closed session, if you vote on anything in closed session, take any action, you have to report that out, right? But if there's no vote, if it's just a discussion, then you're fine. You don't have to report anything else. Only when you vote in closed session. Okay. Confidentiality, always remember in closed session, confidentiality is very important. If you make a mistake with confidentiality and tell someone and they find out about that, your authorizer finds out about that, there's really no cure to that other than going off the board. And that's what we've seen every time. When there's been an accusation and it's been proved up that a board member has violated confidentiality in closed session, they have to leave the board. So it's an important thing. So what happens if you do violate and make a mistake? Usually what you're going to see is a notice of concern from LAUSD. They'll send you a letter saying, hey, we received a complaint that you did this, some kind of violation of the Brown Act. Usually they give you 3 or 4 days to respond and send it back to them. What you want to do is look at your agenda, look at your minutes, try to figure out what happened. For instance, if the complaint is they voted on an item that wasn't on the agenda, right? Those are pretty easy. All you have to do is get your agenda and get your minutes, match them up, and you make copies of it, send it to LAUSD and say, no, we didn't, everything's fine. If you look at the minutes, they match up the agenda and there's no violation, right? If by chance you do something, we had not too long ago an executive director of a school who accidentally posted last month's agenda on the website and no one caught it until the day after the board meeting when the authorizer caught it. And the authorizer sent them a letter. And she looked at the website and realized she made a mistake. She just posted the wrong calendar, the wrong meeting. So what happens then? When a Brown Act occurs like that, any items that are voted on by the board it's null and void, right? Doesn't count. So if you approve contracts, whatever you did at that board meeting does not, it's like it never happened. So what you have to do to cure a Brown Act violation like that is to call another board meeting, right? Either do a special meeting, or if it can wait, if there wasn't anything that had to be done immediately, you can just put those items back on your board agenda for next month's regular meeting to watch it. But you have to have another meeting, you have to put those items properly on the agenda, and you have to act like the meeting never happened before. And you have to be able to discuss that item fully like you did last time, and then you vote on it again. and that's how you cure a Brown Act violation. So it's not that difficult to do. It's easy, but you need to be very careful not to violate the Brown Act. I mean, once in a great while, almost everybody, LAUSD violates the Brown Act once in a great while. But what they don't want to see is like, okay, this just happened 2 months ago and you're violating the Brown Act again, or this happened 4 months ago and this is the third time. So you need to be careful with that. And let me see. Here in LA, the DA does not get involved. And the last thing I'll say is this: is we've never seen a revocation of a charter school based on a Brown Act violation. But in almost every revocation, there is a Brown Act violation that's involved in the revocation, right? So it's something that you just have to be careful of. And I think it does show, following the Brown Act and not having complaints about violating the Brown Act shows that the board has it together, you know what you're doing, you're a professional group, and the school's in good shape. So that's the importance of following the Brown Act. Okay? And sorry if I ran a couple minutes late. Yes?
What is the definition for school business?
It's very broad, right? So, for instance, so one thing you could do is if everybody wanted to find out, hey, we want to have a special meeting on the first week of December, who's available? The chair can send out an email to all board members saying, hey, who's available December 2nd for a board meeting? That's okay. That wouldn't be school business because he's actually talking about when can we have a meeting. But if he added to it, we want to talk about A, B, and C, now it's getting kind of like school business, right? So it's not a definite definition of school business, but we always feel safe to say, hey, anything that involves school, did you have a specific?
Yeah, that's my question, like anything that involves the school?
The courts have made it very broad, the definition very broad. So yeah, I would be careful of that. Anything that involves the school, I think would be, if you're a majority, you're not having or not having an agenda for it, I think violation.
So, I just have to highlight a couple of things. So Wayne was actually the first, because I've conducted several seminars by Young and Manny. He was actually one of the ones that ran the Brown Act and Conflict of Interest workshop, which was actually very good because during these workshops with other board members, other executive directors, and operations people from schools. So you get a lot of various different crazy questions that are asked. So it's always fascinating. But one thing I would like to point out is, one of the things that Frank had mentioned, ADA compliance, and there's an ADA compliance law in America, but not in Germany or in Italy or something.
It's similar, but not.
They're similar, but not exact. But I think the thing to remember is things have to be done in good faith. And ultimately, the authorizer, if there is a Brown Act violation, they're going to do the same thing we're going to do, which is they're going to investigate. They're going to launch an investigation and they're going to find out. Now, if it happens to be in a room in Italy and, it's a hotel room and the authorizer finds out through a website that or a telephone call that they have somewhat, some ramps that allow handicap access, they're going to say, look, that's in good faith, I don't think it's a Brown Act violation. But it is something, of course, to keep in mind that we want to be flexible with board members and flexible with our meetings, but also at the same time, I think ultimately the rule that I live by is if it's school business, if there's a majority, we're not talking about it. Just not even send emails, not even just have that conversation in public and accept that all conversations with the majorities should always be done, whatever the formulation is. So.
Yeah, I'll add too, there is a thing called substantial compliance, which kind of goes to your European question, which is, hey, if you went to the hotel and you asked them, do you have ramps, do you have elevators, and they said yes, and you followed it, and then LADA does an investigation and finds a technicality that, well, the room you were in was on a different side of the hotel, it didn't have, you can argue substantial compliance, that you made the effort, you did your due diligence, and you complied with the law. And courts will side with you on that.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks
Enjoy your drive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do we have your presentation?
I have a couple of.
It's in the Dropbox.
Oh, I have a couple of extra copies.
For the board binder?
Iggy, if you could let the record show that Pete joined the meeting at 6:01. Thank you. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, student spotlight.
Can we take a 2-minute stretch and then get the students in here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Ethan, did you get a copy of the agenda?
I sat there.
You did not? I probably took yours.
Well, you should be more on there, you're more important than I can figure it out as we go. Yes, sir? Yeah. Just not a good time to go to the drink.
Yeah, I know. Or maybe a perfect time.
Maybe, I don't know how weird and balance is, but.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
All right, our next up on our agenda, we have a real brief word from a few of our student council members, and to tell us about it, it's Tron. Start us out.
Alright, good evening.
If you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angel Tron. I'm our school's IB coordinator, and I'm lucky enough this year to also be your student council advisor. So we invited a few of our student council members to just introduce themselves, and we wanted to share with you kind of their reasons for wanting to be on student council, and each of them will share one of their goals that they have that they wanted to bring forth onto student council. Everyone come on up. So if you want to let the board know your name, your grade, and then we'll come back and you can share why you wanted to join student council this year.
So I'm Carl Rasmus Frisco. I'm in grade 5A, so I'm 5th grade. And I wanted to be in student council because I know we have green team, but the green team only picks up trash around the school, like the things that the school makes not so green, they change to make it green. But some things I saw that aren't so green still. For example, the cafeteria. They use paper trays every day. If we could use plastic trays and we use them every day, that would then reduce the amount of paper wasted every day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I wanted to be in student council because in 3rd grade I was in student council, and I wanted to go up for historian, but I forgot to bring a speech. So this year I was prepared, and I brought a speech and everything, and today we had our elections, and I'm president, so. Thank you.
I'm Bree, and I wanted to be in student council because first I wanted to help people, and second I wanted to make the school a better place.
Hello, I am Brian, and I am in 6th grade, and I wanted to be in student council because I was new here and I wanted to get involved, and what better way than to help out the school. Thank you.
Our student councils really impressed me very much this year. We all came up with a mission statement as a student council, and I just kind of compiled all of their goals together, and really all the student council members had one mission, which was to help make their school a better place, which included making students feel safe and including everyone in the community. So really proud of them and really excited. Coming up in the IB update, we'll talk a little bit about one of their first initiatives at school, which was Kindness Week, and the student council was really helpful to come up with a lot of great ideas that they thought their classes and their classmates would enjoy. And so they helped with those kindness stations at recess, and you see evidence of some of their ideas outside room 45 today. So we appreciate them a lot. I look forward to a great year.
Thank you. So, I'd like to ask a few questions if you don't mind. So, Rasmus, I know you said that you joined student council in order to, for recycling and getting rid of the plastic. I'd like to ask a few of you on 3 things you guys want to accomplish this year, being a member of the student council.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to accomplish to have there are a lot of bullies at school, and sometimes I see them, so I want to help other people stay away from them, and yeah.
Okay.
I want to help when someone is having a hard time, I want to help them.
My goal is to use technology more often, and also for house colors, I want more sports that coach authorizes.
Each of the students also has a suggestion box in their classroom, and they're always really excited to bring all the suggestions to student council meeting and talk about them. There's quite a lot of talk about how to improve playground play, how to help have interesting or different activities for students to join.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming. I know it's a Monday night and it's late, and you probably still have lots of homework to do, but it means so much to us that you took the time to join us and show how much you care for the school. And I hope that you and we, as part of the school's leadership team, can start working together to make Goethe great. So thanks, everybody. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Go ahead, go shake everyone's hand. Good. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chris. All right, at this time, I would like to open for public comment. Do we have any sign-ups? I will take that as a no. Moving on to consent items. Chris, do we have the meeting notes for June 17th yet?
We do not.
I would make a recommendation that we compile what we have from other sources and then bring it forward for the next board meeting. Approval of the regular board meeting minutes of October 21st, 2019. Do I have a motion? All right, all in favor?
I abstain, I wasn't present.
More here? Okay, so that's three yes. Approval of the special board meeting minutes of October 30th. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right, moving on to the ED report.
Okey-doke.
Just give me a second, I'm sorry.
So I have been starting off each time with enrollment. We held exactly steady, no gains, no losses. We did have a little internal movement of a few classrooms and acquisition, students switching one way or the other to immersion or acquisition, but we are steady today at 421. So it's the same spot we were at. We do note that there is one student who is in the TK who is not counted on our ADA, so when you see the ADA enrollment, that won't happen until that student turns 5 in December. And so that's an unusual case, and it was one that we never had that issue before, and we'll be able to resolve that in the future.
Do you have to be 5 years old to count?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You don't get paid, otherwise we don't normally accept that a student is already here, and so,
So is it December 1st is the cutoff?
yeah. All right. Oh, that's going anyway. Okay, under outreach, we have a couple of outreach pieces that we've been working on for quite some time, and one of them has been a promotional video in which we started actually at the end of last year and did some of the one day of the filming at International Flair, and but the bulk of it was done this year, and the person who was at the center of this is here with us tonight, and I want to thank her publicly and have her tell you a little bit about it, and that's Nazmia Akbaba for being the one who really guided this and process to create a product by the end. So Nazmia, can you share a little bit about that process?
Yeah, sure. So as Chris said, okay, hi, my name is Nazmia. As Chris said, we started this at the end of last school year, and our first shooting day, half a day, was at the International Flair. In total, we had 2.5 days of shooting. We had interviews of specific teachers, and then we had in-class shots too. We interviewed several students, and then we worked with a really cool team that was super flexible, and they had great ideas and really made our vision come to life. It was a great experience for me to direct this. It was a lot of fun. I learned so much, I have to say, and I want to say thank you to you guys for giving me this opportunity to do this. So yeah, do you have any questions or? Should we just watch it? Yeah, let's watch it.
Well, the best way to do that actually. Okay, that's through Vimeo, fine.
Is that okay?
Yep, that'll work.
Should we turn off the lights?
Yeah.
So my biggest inspiration was and continues to be my 2 daughters. I wanted for my 2 daughters to be bilingual. And a very, very big component for me was to break away from the traditional educational model, for teachers to become facilitators of learning and supporting the critical thinking component. That was very important to me.
Sure, let's start with that. What do we know about her appearance?
So when students attend our school, families can expect them to learn in multiple languages, so German and Spanish, to have a lot of inquiry-based projects and activities that they're working on with other students. We follow the primary years program from the International Baccalaureate. IB curriculum is rigorous, it's challenging, but it's also relevant. How does this learner ask questions? Can we help this learner to ask the right questions to really get a deeper understanding, as well as use what they know to solve problems?
Super. It was exactly what I thought my daughter's education should be. I loved it so much that I became a teacher at this school.
I'm German, my husband's American, so having a second language was really, really important to us.
The students are not only learning another language, but they're opening up their minds to so many things here.
When you learn a language, you learn about the people, their music, their food. And when you learn about somebody's culture, you feel closer to them. It helps you learn about yourself.
We speak both English and Spanish at home, and when my son was little, it was really hard to push him to speak Spanish. Now, he not only likes learning German, but he also likes learning Spanish, and he's really proud about knowing Spanish.
So it's not just German students and it's not just American students. It's a beautiful mixture of kids from all these different backgrounds, and we celebrate all of their diversity.
Considering my kids are from a very diverse background, it's very important to me to have them exposed to that.
Here at Goethe, we really feel that supporting students socially and emotionally is of utmost importance. We have class meetings, there are cross-age grade level buddies.
So they gain empathy and they gain communication skills and real life skills.
It really focuses on the whole learner, on their social development, their emotional development.
There are structured activities that you do in the classroom to help students learn how to interact with each other, how to talk to each other.
My daughter really came out of her shell. The teachers taught her how to be a risk taker, and she participated in a talent show.
When we drop our kids off in the morning, everyone's there. The principal, vice principal, teachers.
We're a tight-knit community. We're a community that we're there for each other. We do as much as we can for the school, but a lot for the students.
Parents and students and teachers, administration are all involved.
When we talk of Goethe, we speak of family.
Ich liebe die Schule, weil wir eine große Familie sind.
The students are fantastic and they are my reason for getting up every morning.
I can really watch them grow and mature in their own ways, and it's just beautiful to see.
That's the biggest alignment for me when I think about the dream.
Darker than the original is. I don't know, I think it's just a sticker.
It's not as orange.
Yeah, it's not as orange. The colors are actually nice.
I just want to tell you that I think you have, I mean, at least for me, you've captured the essence of this organization and the essence of the school. You've really brought it out, and that was done really, really well. I can't wait to see the reaction from the rest of our community.
It's really inspiring. I love the music even that you guys chose, and I love the way that you told the story. I love how everybody contributed and had different contributions, and it really encapsulated, the spirit of Goethe. It was amazing. I'm excited about it. And I would love for even like the parents to have access to it and share it out if we can at some point.
Yeah.
I think, being on different Facebook groups and hearing moms talk about the schools in LA. You don't hear them talk about Goethe as much as you do hear them talk about the other schools, and so I think this is even exciting content to share to people who aren't hearing it.
Frank?
It's very good. It's very good. It's like I don't have to add to anything, but with the essence of time, I can talk to you later about it. But it's absolutely
I mean, tell me. It's go ahead, Neat.
No, I think it's very good. Well, put together very well. Very professional. Look to tell a good story. I have a couple questions though. Who's the intended audience? Where would what do you intend to do with it?
So a couple of places where we'll be using it is for tours. So it'll be shown as part of the launch of a tour, and that's like that's like the number one piece. But we're also looking at like outreach events, not necessarily always showing it verbally, but at outreach events we're looking to bring like a laptop and have visual displays. This would be one of the visual displays that we can move through while we're talking about it. So it just kind of shows this, especially with the slow motion pieces that are a part of it. And then the other place where it goes back to what you were saying of getting it out there so people can see it is the website. And so I'll share how that works out as well. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I would say anywhere we can possibly share it, like Danielle said, give the link to parents, and if they want to share it with their communities, that would work. On social media, I will be sharing bits and pieces of it, definitely. And yeah, for the school tours, and like Chris said, when we went to those outreach events, it just gets so busy sometimes that you don't get to talk to all the people. So while you're talking to parts, you can just have that, running, and they can just listen to it.
How long is it? Is it about 2-3 minutes?
So we have 2 versions of the video. This is the long version that we showed you. It's about 4 minutes something. The shorter version is about 2 minutes.
We need to share this with our authorizer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
Well, they'll be here for the, they
No,
don't kick
but-
us off the campus.
Yeah, but it just needs to be. It could go viral. It's a good one.
And this content, as it is, could live on Facebook. For Instagram, it would need to be 60 seconds or less. I don't know if there's enough.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put together a YouTube link.
Yeah, we'll put it on our YouTube, definitely.
And we definitely can link it to our new website.
Yes.
So that's, and it, we'll show you how that goes and on the very next slide.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nazmia, for your work on this.
Yeah, thank you for letting me work on it.
You kept it moving, and it was so organized. Greatly appreciated. So this ties into our new website launch. So we've had a website. We like to think of this as an upgrade, and we're very excited about it because it has more pictures, more features. For us on the back end, it's more user-friendly, and what that allows us to have several different people working on different parts of it. It's not open to everybody. You've got to keep control of it, but it allows us to be a little bit more, provide better updates as time goes on, because we'll have different people in charge of different pieces of the website. If you can you go ahead and see if it'll connect us?
Do you want to walk us through, like, a sort of the navigation?
Sure. I realize we're a little cut off on this side, but
Thank you, Casey.
yeah, I'm not sure if this will. So the pictures up at the top that scroll through, and then all of the navigation pieces are along the top here. And so on the previous one, it was above and below, and people were going up and back and up and back. So having it all along the top and then drop downs from there are where they go. We were able to take a lot of information that we had on the previous website and build it out into several different pages. So for instance, if we go to under About and go down to Board of Trustees.
Oh, thank you.
So we have information that's there, but what's also broken, this is the information that it is about the Board of Trustees, but then to find out who the Board of Trustees are, you click on the left side there, and you can see where that goes. But if we look over here, for instance, under students.
What is the contact the board?
Okay, click on Contact the Board. And this is...
Perfect. Address. They can send us a letter.
But if you go under, or say under Community, let's look under Green Team. So information about the Green Team, pictures that we didn't used to have before, and information that's there. So feel free to dive into it, take a look at what's there. We'll be putting out a notice. If you can go back to the home page. And let me scroll down. So just under here is our mission. We wanted to focus on, well, of course, donations and applying, making sure enrollment was in there. We wanted to differentiate between our elementary program and our middle school program. And then right in the center was IB. And that was because we wanted that to be the driving force. Don't click on these, but just each one will take you into a different piece of where, so they're all linked into other parts of the website. So scrolling down, have news and announcements. Well, news is we just opened a new website. You can, and we put the video on here as well for the moment. Also, we made a focus about the middle school being open, and this was from a picture from the ribbon cutting that we did earlier in the year. So that was one we wanted to highlight. We see calendar of events, and this is the one we were talking about earlier. Keep on scrolling down, and where it says video highlights. So this is the video that we just watched. This is the 4-minute video, the longer one that we wanted to have people have available. And so it shows up, you can see with a nice picture that's there, but then you click on it and it goes into the video. There's also down here a section where we have photo albums. So our school at a glance and just some pictures. We'll build these out as time goes on. Every time we do a big event or something like that, we can do attach a photo album to it and put those in. And as I said, from the back end side of this, it's very easy to do. And so we've all been learning how to do it and figuring those pieces out. The final piece is scrolling down, is our push-outs from Instagram. We are also going to be building out Facebook and Twitter. Twitter usually populates, so I'm not sure why that one's not populated right now. And we're building out our own Facebook page that'll be coming there. So it gives you a quick rundown of what we've been working on in terms of a website launch. If we could, any questions about that?
I have a question. I think it looks awesome. Would it be possible to put the video on the homepage? Homepages at the top. Because homepages that have video.
So it is on the homepage. You have to scroll down, but our homepage is long, but it's actually we'll play around with it and we'll see, and then there's possibility of we can play around with different ideas.
Typically a homepage where when there's video at the top, it performs better. You get a higher click-through rate, but also if the still could be kids in uniform as the still versus Elka's daughters, well, it's lovely. It just kind of clearly shows that the video still.
Okay.
It just really shows it's a video about this school.
Is it meant to be, sorry. Is it meant to be also a portal where we connect to Power School?
Any grade schools?
No, Power School is the...
the back end.
The back end. So for parents, in other organizations where kids go to school, the website is also the website turns into a portal where you can look up the academics. So you have one place to go to, and then you just have one password, and then...
Right, and we're going to be sharing more. In case you want to give a little bit about
the
where we're headed.
transition from the previous website to this one, we didn't add a lot of new stuff in terms of new information or content to the webpage. It was really getting the new format and the look the way we want it, so we can start adding in those other more useful items. But a link to Parent Portal is definitely one that should go on there.
I can't see the headings from here, so.
I have another question. I'm sorry, in regard to functionality for parents, is there also a communication tool with class pages so you can inform the teacher, my kid is sick, and it goes directly to the teacher and it goes directly to, again, it's a portal feature.
So there's going to be two pieces to this as we brought in the last time, which was the Fresh Schools communication tool, which will be a part of that. They will be linked together with the website. The website is as much outward facing to the world, and the Fresh Schools will be the internal communication and those pieces that are going in, but they will be linked together. So we'll be figuring out the details on that.
Okay, so my final question is regarding, as we're donating over the website and we have a link, right? How are we dealing with cyber attacks? Because we're having we could potentially have sensitive data like credit card data. Do we need to get training and make sure that we're not being hacked?
I would imagine that that's a merchant gateway that's being controlled by whatever the, yeah, so this engine, I think, what is this? PayPal? So then it would be controlled by the security in PayPal, we wouldn't take any.
Yeah, but you know, there is potentially, you know, I don't know, because in the very litigious environment, you said I think I encourage the leadership to make sure that the exposure to cyber attacks as it relates to collecting data, credit card information, whether we're collecting it or not, just make sure, reach out to CharterSafe and make sure that this is in line with cybersecurity.
Yeah, that seems reasonable, and in the same way, not just with PayPal, but also with PowerSchool.
Yeah.
The good news is with PowerSchool, we don't host it ourselves. It is cloud hosted, so it has all the protections of PowerSchool within that cloud hosting. Yeah, we can get
just reach out to the CharterSafe organization, who's providing the P&C coverage for us, and that's part of it. So that we make sure that there's no exposure for us.
Frank, you good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, Pete?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because I couldn't see the headers there, whether there's an academic page that actually has academic performance on it.
In results.
In results, yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
I mean, if I were looking at a school, that's what I'd want to see. And I think, we should be proud of what the strengths are. I mean, there's not everything is perfect, but
and it could it should link to the state.
Yeah. See our great results or something.
Scoreboards.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question. So just going back to the homepage. So to further what Pete said, and yeah, the sliders are fine. I think they're great, but I think what Danielle mentioned is if you have sort of like, I don't know, like a 10-second loopy video, right? And then they click on it and it goes into a more in-depth video, you're gonna get more people to watch that great video, which is kind of what we want. But something else to consider is on this, if you can add a layer up here, if it's possible, these awards, right? Especially California Distinguished School and Green Ribbon School, things like that. Don't have it all the way at the bottom. See if we can move it up to the top right here as a sort of a, you know what I mean? As an overlay on top of what, if it's a rotating image or if it's just a 10-second.
I think that could be an image that has all of them as one of these images, and you see it.
Yeah. But I would just say that's something that you want to have someone see as soon as they.
Well, and we can make these images, the ones that are rotating, we can do as many as we want, and have control over how those are done. So
right. So I think the takeaways are a looping video that leads like right on the front here, that leads to that more powerful video, whether it's a 2-minute one or 4-minute one. Frank's comment about security. Check with our insurance, right, to make sure that
they provide risk management services, and their questionnaires, and they provide insurance companies to come out and check and go through the process, and you can then say, okay, we did our due diligence.
Right. And Pete's point is showcase the academic performance.
Got all three.
Yeah. And then lastly, I think that our awards, have it be more prominent. Sorry, I don't know. Have it be more prominent on the top portion, or maybe even up at the top. And I don't know. It's up to. I guess it's an artistic choice. But the other thing to consider is something that Danielle mentioned last time is, I think the fact that we are a free public charter school is, I don't see that anywhere. I mean, if you look at that video, I would think it's a private school. Very well funded, good private school. So something that says that we're a free public charter school.
Maybe it's even on the title page.
Oh, the title page, right, exactly, of the video. Right, exactly. Yeah, perfect, yeah.
Just so you don't have to do another edit.
You flash it very quickly, or for like 5 seconds or subliminal. Free.
Oh, I mean with somebody who's going to
it seems like it's free.
Is this also going to be for mobile too? These changes will impact the mobile site.
We gotta check this out.
So when if you go on your phone and use the mobile version of the site, the mobile version of the site is different.
Been trying to find.
It has less functions.
It's, much less functionality, and it's hard to know if you're just a regular person searching, which is their mobile site, which is their regular desktop site, where am I gonna go? And this is where most people are searching. One more question, for the Instagram feed, is it pulling from Goethe's feed, or is it pulling from feeds where people are tagging and hashtagging Goethe as well? Just ours? I mean, it might be fun later down the road to make it more of a UGC situation where if people are tagging Goethe or they're hashtagging it, then they have the opportunity for their photos to be on the website too. I don't know.
The only worry on something like that is if there are bad actors out there.
Oh yeah, you're monitoring it. You're pulling in what you want. You're not just pulling in everything. You're pulling in what you like. If you're just searching the hashtag or you're searching the. So that's a perk to be like an influencer,
Yeah.
It does. I mean, influencer marketing is huge.
Nasma's our influencer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move us forward because I'm only partway through my.
Quick on the side, on the menu, you can push full site, and then you can see the full website on the mobile phone.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just the mobile version. There is a choice to go to the full website.
Okay.
All right, can we shift back to? All right, well that leads us, I'm still talking about outreach, and you were asking where we would use this and what we've been doing. Last month at our meeting, it was asked how many people are we seeing, and so I wanted to come back with that information to you. We have packets that we give out of information, and so we went through. This is over 100 people that we've hit in the fall, where we've spoken to them directly at these outreach events, and closer to home is our school tours. And our school tours, we've had over 50 families that have come since we started in September. So you can see the different tours that we've had and then the different numbers. The numbers are fairly small at the beginning, and now they're starting to heat up as we get more into the season where families are thinking not about just getting the year started, but actually thinking about, what about next year? So that's where we stand. Okay, moving on to facilities. Just wanted to give you an update, and Yasir, you may want to jump in on this as well. For our site expansion, oops, I clicked it on mine, didn't click it on yours. We have, I've met with a couple of different folks. Yasir and I actually met with John Kim of Stifel Public Finance, and I also met with David Kuhn and Jack Patrick from Red Hook Capital. Two different companies. One is more on the finance end, one is more on the real estate end. But we were trying to get the lay of the land of where things are at with the real estate market currently. And do we stand a chance in this market of being able to enter into it? And it was, in both cases, gave us that it's a very, very tough market that we're looking at. SB 740 is a piece of the financial puzzle that would allow us to bring in money to be able to build or renovate. But we still need initial capital, an initial capital investment. And one of the issues that we face because of our current budget is not a balanced budget. That is an issue that they pointed out already, so that we need to be looking at that as we're moving forward. That's an important piece in terms of major long-term financing. They also suggested we look at a wider area meaning not just in the immediate neighborhood here, but looking to maybe leapfrog Culver City or look in some other West LA areas where we might get possible better price. Also suggested looking at prefab options, which is instead of doing a build, if you bought land and built on it, or a renovation, but actually buy just the land and then have prefabricated buildings that are placed onto it, which cost is a little less, but it also saves money and specifically time with regard to fees and inspections, and because these are all pre-inspected set up prefab buildings, and things have changed dramatically. When we look at our prefab buildings that are here, which are the portables, these were placed in the 60s and 70s, and things have come a long way in terms of prefab buildings since then. So just want to point that out. This is a long-term discussion, and as we said before, this is not something we want to leave all options on the table. And so, yes.
Are you also looking into leasing space?
Yes, this is all. That's all. So purchase and or lease.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think the highlights from our conversation so far is, look, part of the reason Ocean has been very successful at laying out their plan to open their new space is they got a $18 million grant that was funneled to them from LUSD, and the rest of it they got financing for. Hence, they can open a space on the west side. So options, Chris and I are going to meet with, I forget the gentleman's name, Father, whoever from it. And from the Ocean. And then the executive director of Ocean, just to see what their plans are as far as handing over the space. The other part of our conversation is that SB 740 needs to be part of the equation, which means we have to be a feeder school from a free and reduced lunch program a school that's in the local area, give them preferential lottery, and also that is specifically for rent. So Frank, yes, you're absolutely right. That is a big part of our equation, is to rent a space where we can renovate, and these organizations can help us find that space and also give us the funding for it. But it doesn't have to be a brand spanking new $30 million a year building, overlooking the Santa Monica Bay. It can be 6th grade and 7th grade. It can be the middle year or the elementary program, but it's to get into these conversations and get into it in a methodical fashion that we can lay out. So, Chris and I we'd like to bring you guys forward, have that discussion with a couple of these guys at our next board meeting, where we can talk about, in more depth about what this looks like.
Did want to give a little more information about Prop 39. Just know that we did submit our Prop 39 application on November 1st. Again, we are continuing to work with our legal team with regard to the substantial penalties and over allocations of space for the previous 3 years. We are working with Young Mini and Core, as well as California Charter Schools Association, with regard to a group effort of trying to share some costs with working through this with LAUSD. We are also working individually with YMC on an individual effort in response. I just wanted to put a note here, just so we're aware, it is not business as usual in what we're seeing from LA Unified. The fact that they did the over-allocation penalties that they've never done in the past is an indicator, and that they do not seem to be at this point wavering from that. There are just many unknowns that what's going to happen with our Prop 39 application from this year. And what the expectation is from the current year that we're in. Just remember, the Prop 39 application we just turned in is for next year. So, but none of the rules that we've lived by, or I would not say the rules, but sort of the axioms we've lived by. Oh, this usually happens, or that should happen, or this is likely to happen. It's just a lot of big unknowns. So I just want to put that out there. I know that's not comforting, but I do feel like we need to know that.
Can you tell us what the next step is after submitting the actual application?
So there is a timeline that they're going to in December tell us what number or amount they are recognizing as our number of in-district students. By February 1st, they will give us a preliminary indication, which we have to respond to by March 1st. And then April, they give us, if there's a change, they give us a response, and the final thing is May. So May 1st is really the key, which is why, and as we start talking budget decisions are going to be driven by what we have available to us in facilities. And so May is going to be the key month of really figuring out, but we need to go into that month with a clear idea of what we're going to do if this happens, or if this happens, or if this happens, and go from there. Okay. So on the other side of money, I wanted to give a format now that I think will work. I clicked mine again. Wrong way. There we go. A format that I think will be helpful to us moving forward, and I intend to use this now each month. You can see up at the top is the totals, and so we put down a goal with this of $520,000, which is a little beyond the $500,000 that's in the budget, but we've tried to set some aspirational goals. So that's where the expectation is, and then you get the total actual to date, and a percentage of that is next to it. We've broken it down into 8 major components. The annual giving campaign, the gala, and the jogathon being kind of the 3 biggies, and then also grants being a major piece, but then also some smaller ones like Eat and Shop for Goethe, the book fair, are smaller but important, and that people can contribute in lots of different ways. Matching donations, which we put a $15,000 amount there. When we initially were planning for the goal for the annual giving campaign, we were including matching donations in our thinking. So that $220,000 actually to us was including both the amount given and also the matching donations as well. So I'm just kind of reconciling that as we go forward. And then the final is other fundraising. And this was a little bit of a catch-all because there are a whole bunch of things that we've done traditionally year after year in fundraising. An example was Goethe Cafes. Well, we don't have Goethe Cafes in the same way we did in the past. And those were really done for grade level fundraising in most cases, or it might be a specific team, green team or the garden team did something and did fundraising. So we've shifted some of that to grant writing, so that as some of our teams need to build up their money, that they're not doing it through separate fundraising. We're going to go out and try to shoot for grants. We did one for the garden team already, one grant that's been submitted. But we also have things that we haven't done before. We never used to ask for field trip donations directly, and we did that this year, and we got at the beginning of the year for each grade level specific to field trips. We did this because we knew we wouldn't have Goethe Cafes. So we made that direct ask at the beginning of the year. That raised about $15,000, and that's a part of the $20,000 that's in there already. And so there'll be other things. The 5th grade science camp and money that's brought in for that has always been brought in through the donation account. So we'll be tracking that as well and fundraising that they do specifically on that. Anything that GPA does, even though GPA, as we saw last month, is not a fundraising group, they're the ones who bring the volunteers here but if they do anything that does make some funds that come in, it'll go into this other. And then any outside donor, someone just who's a friend of Goethe, we would put it in there. So these are all the places where we're at, and we'll be able to give you a monthly update that's just numbers that I think gives you a pretty clear picture of where we stand and where we're at. So, any questions?
Comments? I think it should say total actual received in the heading.
Okay.
Versus pledged, because I know
that is received.
That is received.
Yep.
in bank account cash.
Yes.
And the other one actually pledged of annual giving is higher than received.
The
So
pledged amount is not in here, but the received amount is.
Yeah,
and
so-
but we'll have all that. I mean, as the year goes on, we'll be getting all the pledged amounts will show up in received. We hope they do.
Right.
But so add total actual received to date.
I think for the board it's also interesting to see, a plan going forward, how likely it is we are going to make our fundraising goal.
So I would probably change that to total received to date.
Yeah, total received to date.
And maybe add something else that has how many days we have left in the year. And you can base projections off of that, prior year and things like that.
How far along is the jogathon? Because there's some money in there. Tomorrow.
Yeah, we did not put any jogathon in yet. So jogathon is tomorrow. There has been money raised. We look like we're on target to meet that goal. So next month you'll see that in there. But none of it is in there at this point for jogathon because it's not till tomorrow.
Did the timing of the jogathon this year impact the funds received? Because just last year it was in the spring, and this year fundraising started right when annual giving ended.
Yes, and traditionally it has. So last year was the anomaly.
Yeah.
It was because of it was not ready to go at that point in the year. But we can certainly look at that as maybe there's a better timing wise moving forward. Okay.
One more question about book fair. So $3,000 raised against a $10,000 goal, and there's one more book fair left. So it's probably not likely that we raise $7,000 this
Right.
at the second book fair.
And if I could, I'll go to Frank's question. I think it's kind of the same question.
Mm-hmm.
At next month, I think we'll have a better picture of where we're at. But the quick answer to that is, I would guess we probably overshot what book fair. I think what happens with book fair is you get 50% of the amounts if you go through, or you get 30% cash. We like the 50%, but I don't think that was understood when that goal was set. So, but again, we were aspirational in goals.
What do you, I don't understand what you said.
Total receipts that come in,
Yeah.
You can either take 30% straight cash,
From the book fair.
from the book fair
Got it.
and get cash.
Okay.
Or you can get 50% of the receipts that come in and using Scholastic, basically charging from, or buying things from the Scholastic catalog.
So it's like a tier on how much you can get.
So
out
you
of the
get
funds.
more if you do the Scholastic catalog, and there's so many things we need from that catalog that it works out better to have the 50%.
It's like a credit.
Every school I've ever been that does a book fair through Scholastic does it with 50%, not 30%.
And we did it with a 30%.
No, we're doing it.
Okay.
But I think it was unclear about how that's calculated when this was
There,
originally
got
set
it.
up.
Okay. So is it gonna get better or worse?
That's
Is that number gonna get better or worse next month?
it's gonna, that one will stay the same because we won't be doing a spring, we won't be doing a spring one until the spring.
Okay, so it's gonna stay the same.
Yeah, my guess is the spring one will come in a little, maybe a little higher, but not, I don't think it'll be that.
Chris, if it helps, remember it got canceled by a day because we lost the permit to do the fall festival, and we lost that. That might be part of that too.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's on for 5 days, correct?
No.
How many days? 3. Ooh. And so we only did it for 2. Oh wow.
Well, we did it for 2, we did it for 3.
Okay, so it's
But
4
we
days.
initially were planning to do it on a Saturday,
On a Saturday,
as a
yeah.
part of the bigger
When the whole-
event
Yeah.
that was
School is here.
canceled.
Okay.
All right, that's the end of my report.
Chris, thank you for that. Update on the IB primary New Year's program. Pull this up. Sorry, give me a second.
Ready?
Yes,
Hi.
please.
Good evening. It's me again. I'm happy to share with you some of the findings from the IB evaluation visit that we had last October. We had prepared a year-long self-study in the school year of 2017 through 18. We had our evaluation visit of our primary years program in October of last year. The findings were given back to us close to the end of last school year. And so I wanted to share with you some of our both things that we were commended on, things that the IB recommends to continue to build toward the future with our program, as well as some matters that they wanted clarified and followed up on. I don't have that. Sorry. Not by magic, it would happen.
Yeah, you wanna-
Sure.
that one.
So some of our commendations, things that they thought were awesome, besides sort of the everyday atmosphere, they really enjoyed being here with our staff. They thought it was a happy place to be. They could tell people enjoyed working here and that students were happy to be here as well. In particular in the report, it said that they were commended for integrating multiple cultures and celebrating diversity. They could see that in many facets and in all the stakeholders that they spoke to, and that we take a lot of care to cultivate a caring and respectful atmosphere at our school. And these photos, most of these photos are all from events that have taken place this school year. Other commendations, they're kind enough to recognize the PYP coordinator for leadership and supporting staff. They felt that the compilation of documents that was submitted supported our program implementation, and that teachers had resources and had both staff and resources to draw from. And they thought that leadership and administration showed great support for the staff and the proper implementation of the program. So they really felt that we were implementing the PYP with fidelity and could show that.
Angel, who's the PYP coordinator?
I am.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I am.
Thank you.
I didn't know I was going to be presenting this, so I just pulled the comments straight from the report. Other recommendations, they appreciated that the governing board and administration showed funding for the program beyond program requirements, as well as the awesome fundraising that they see the parents and the community engaged in for additional facilities and resources for our school. Some recommendations, a lot of this is very much related to the development of our curriculum, and so, you know, lots of details when they're reading through our curriculum plans. They would like to see more time spent or more time added to our professional development to allow teachers to plan vertically from grade level to grade level, and that's something that we put into our action plan for this year, so that's something we're working on. They always, no matter how much collaborative planning time is in a school timetable, they will always say, give more collaborative time for teachers, and the teachers will always say, we need more collaborative time. So that's always something we look closely at and make sure to have. We continue to work with staff, or I continue also to work with staff on developing their unit planners, so documenting curriculum as we plan and reflect. The PYP, or the IB, every few years goes through a cycle of revamping their program. So the primary years program is in a new year of their what they call enhancements. So one of their enhancements is that they really want primary years program to focus on student agency, so that students are an active part of their learning and their community at school. They would like us to continue to work on our library and our multimedia and other resources for student research. A matter that they wanted to be addressed with, they wanted to make sure all new staff attended their IB approved professional development. And really anyone who's involved in instruction and works with students on a regular basis. And they also wanted us to continue to work with our single subject teachers as well as our regular grade teachers on using the IB planning process for single subjects, for standalone subjects like math, PE, Spanish, and art. They would like to continue to see that there's reflection for meaningful and relevant learning from all parties at school, teachers, staff, as well as students. They always push schools to broaden their approaches to teaching, so they wanted to see us broaden our toolbox of ways to teach and learn, continue to address differentiation to meet all students' needs. They would like to see an assortment of different types of assessments, both formal and summative. And they also wanted to make sure that sufficient release time for the PYP coordinator, whoever that is, to work with teaching staff collaboratively, and that there's enough time outside of the classroom to do that, which this year there is. This is a summary of some of my duties as well as current projects at our school. So the ones on the left-hand side are really more IB program focused. So this year there's an enhanced PYP, which means it's a whole new set of documents and ideas to learn about and be trained on. We are working with our candidacy and authorization process for middle years program. So I work with Mr. Michelson on that, as well as our 6th grade teacher, Ms. Pham. I work on curriculum planning and finding resources for different grade levels depending on what they're working on in their units. I provide teacher support and professional development. I'm working on a new system of curriculum documentation. Previously we had something called ManageFact, which is a platform to just plug into. The IB recommended we move away from that platform as they thought it prevented teachers from actively using and sort of suggested we use something more within like Google Docs. So I'm in the process of moving all of the documents into a Google Doc format, as well as rewriting all the units to match the new unit planner. So it's kind of an overhaul of our curriculum, our written curriculum, I should say. I also work with committees like Social Emotional Learning Committee on different projects. I'm working with the community to inform them about the primary years program or on different committee projects that are going on. In the winter, or next in this school year, I'll be teaching the product design course in 6th grade. So I've been auditing a design course for myself in product design. I'm student council advisor this year. I've worked with grade levels on writing brand new units that are more aligned to the next generation science standards. So some of our units hadn't been rewritten since the beginning of our primary years program, so we're really rewriting units, putting them into practice this year and helping teachers to reflect on those. I also am in charge of testing coordination at our school, both GATE and for the state standardized test CASP that takes place in May. One of my big projects is working on that school library and multimedia resources for units and student research. So I've gotten to visit a local school library that's really kind of a beautiful homegrown library, and so I've just gotten started with one of our parent volunteers who's in graduate studies for information studies to kind of help us along with our project and move in growing our library and establishing a circulation system. So it's kind of a long-term project always. And then I'm also working in some of the lower grade classrooms on introducing mindfulness. We got to meet our lovely student council. So it's really nice to have time to still work directly with students and to teach lessons in different grades. So it's really privileged to get to teach the youngest to the oldest at our school. I really get to see kind of a nice picture of what all the students may be going through, as well as being able to relate to teachers and working with them closely. Some specific updates. All new staff were trained or attended an IB approved workshop in October. So we had 7 K through 6 teachers, as well as our administrators, Dr. Jones and Mr. Michelson. We went to middle years program training. As I said, we're moving from the manage back platform, which charged a fee, to the free Google Docs for curriculum documentation. We were able to offer a grade level planning day for every grade level in October. So each grade level had a day where they were released from their teaching duties and they sat together as a whole grade level with me and had professional development and planning time together. We are currently working on a format to do the vertical articulation of some anchor standards and figuring out, with our sometimes limited time altogether on a Tuesday, how we can manage to have all grade levels contribute and talk about what are some of their must-meet standards when a student is coming into their grade level, as well as what are the must-haves for those students when they leave that grade level. So being able to talk about that as a whole staff together. I'm also organizing teacher peer observations, so allowing teachers the opportunity to go into each other's classrooms and learn from each other, and open the idea that, you know, all the teachers really have great things to share with each other. And so we also have what's called a pineapple chart, and so the teachers who are open to other teachers coming into their classroom will also sign up on a schedule and let teachers know every Wednesday I'm teaching writer's workshop. You're welcome to come in and see my format. Our 2 matters to be addressed, which had to do with professional development and single subject planners, have been submitted. They were asked to be submitted by December 1st, so they've already been submitted, and we'll just get feedback from the IB about those. But overall, it was a really positive experience, and the IB was pleased with the progress of our school, and as IB is, the process never stops, and they really push us to continue to always get better and to continue to build our program.
Can I insert one piece here, is that we have Angel working on PYP and MYP, and the work that she's doing with MYP is coordinated with Scott Michelson, who is our administrator for that program, and also our 6th grade teacher, who has been just a great resource in working through this child fam. Scott, did you want to share a couple things about middle year's program as well?
I would be delighted. I do want to apologize for not putting these in the Dropbox. I'm sick Thursday and Friday. based on paper.
So the exciting thing is we're building this program from scratch. And if you look at this timeline, that's just a little overview on top. You can see it starts with the work that we did last year, which was exhaustive but fruitful. And now that we are a candidacy school, there is an insurmountable amount of work to be done over the next few years. I'm not going to go too much in depth on this, but some of the highlights on here is that each year we're building out the next year. So right now we have our 6th grade cohort, which means we're starting work now for our 7th grade curriculum and what that will look like. There are things in bold that have some asterisks next to them, and those are the big benchmarks for us. So at the end of the in 2020 and 2021, we'll have our consultation site visit where someone from the IB organization comes out, audits our program, gives us suggestions, gives us feedback. We implement their suggestions and their feedback, just like Angel talked about with the PYP. And then that next year is a big year where we do our request for authorization, and then once we have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade going, we have our verification visit to get authorized.
Quick question, where are we in regards to the language B, German language acquisition program? That I suppose, because you inserted a line that also reflects for 6th grade, correct?
Correct. So as we go through the program,
the question is, where are we in the build-up for 6th grade as well for German?
Well, at the middle school information night, Frank.
Well, that's why I'm coming to the point.
It's all about meeting the needs of our kids. So next year we're planning to have 50 students in our 6th grade cohort, which would mean 2 classrooms. And the prerequisite would be passing, is it the A1 or the B1? A2. The A2. So any student who's passed the A2 would be able to take German as their language acquisition course. The other students have the option of taking Spanish as their language acquisition course. So we are at the point that we're planning to offer German as one of 2 options for language acquisition with next year's 6th grade class.
Okay. That's what I wanted to
make
say.
sense?
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll show you a few more things. I won't go through this entire packet.
By the way, this comment was also made by members of the German community. They were concerned about that the 6th grade didn't offer a German acquisition program this year.
Yeah.
And so it's important. It's critical for a variety of reasons. But I just want to. That's the genesis of my question.
Something that we've talked about a lot, and we realize how important the foundations of German language are to our community and how our school was built on that.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students in middle school. So.
Yeah. I felt the obligation to address it, so I didn't mean.
Didn't mean to be snarky. So this is where we currently are right now. We've requested our candidacy. We are a candidacy school. The IB is going to be looking over all of these things, our finances, our philosophy, our action plan, our structure. As a candidate school, we are working on all of the IB documents. And in that next packet, it outlines everything that we need to have done before authorization. Then we'll do our application for authorization. And before going through briefly that next checklist, I do want to show
So, two comments on the timeline. Mm-hmm. Our charter is good for another 3 years, right? After this year. So, is there any chance that we, using this timeline, that the verification visit for the school and the actual accreditation is falling into so that we can say we're having the charter prior to charter renewal? We're having the IB authorization for middle school prior to submitting the
Yeah.
The renewal?
Without having spoken to the team, I think it's possible.
Yep. Okay.
It would be hard to go through the authorization process without having all 3 grades already built out, but I believe it's something we can work with the IB organization on. But they do want to see the program fully built out and running before they come and they give us our authorization.
You have 2 visits before, and then you request, after these 2 visits, you request the authorization, right? And then you would have to have...
It's actually 1 visit that I put it on there.
You have twice. You have a twice consultation visit and then another one.
It's 1 visit and then a report, which gives us some feedback.
Okay. I got it. Okay, just checking.
And I do want to show you some of the great work. I know we talked in the site expansion committee last year a lot about all the work that had to be done. Just change the source. On the button, yeah. And then on this one. Okay. So in the middle years program, there are 8 different subject areas. So let's hear computer. Go to computer. Oh well, I'll just talk. So we are building our entire curriculum around the Common Core State Standards with IB. So these IB unit planners that Angel's spoken of, that's what we're creating, 6 units for each course for each year. So you can think about the exhaustive amount of work that is. Then there's also these overview documents that show the trajectory of the standards, the IB approaches to learning that we have to create simultaneously. And those are a couple examples of the things in the last packet, which again, I'm not going to go through, but I've starred the important things when you have some free time. So anything with an X in the authorization column is what we need to finish before our authorization visit. And again, the ones with asterisks next to them are the really big ones.
Can any of these, for the PYP, is anything, for the MYP, is anything transferable from the PYP in order to check some of these boxes?
Some of it, yeah, the philosophy of the school,
right,
yes, the
because it talks about
organization,
international mindedness and all
Right.
that.
yeah,
So
the structural.
it's,
Yeah.
the 4 strands, I would say strand A, which is philosophy, and strand B, which is organization and resources, would be pretty much one and the same. So
Okay.
really where we diverge is the system of planning and writing, documenting the curriculum. It's different.
The
and-
assessment
yeah.
also is
And the
different.
assessments, yes. So it's more looking at it's shifting from transdisciplinary, which is where we teach across all different curriculum subject areas, to being much more subject focused, so that students are really diving deeper into each subject area. So there's 8 distinct subject areas required throughout the year, and so each of those subject areas must teach the 6 different units. And then later on, there's also the goal that different subject areas create 1 or more interdisciplinary units based on some real-world problem-solving project. So then it's hard for one or a few teachers to create those plans. If you're looking for a science and design interdisciplinary unit, it's nice to have a little bit more full staff to really collaborate over that.
Not to belabor the issue, but maybe Pete, you can help also. There is, other schools, other public schools and independent schools are having, they call it STEM,
Yeah.
right? So integrated science, or and then sometimes they diverge from it. They put it together, and there's we don't see the results, and then they just rip it apart. Chemistry and physics and all these other parts. So
the IB is a pretty what they feel solid framework for the process of how to create this those units. So they use what's called global context, and in the PYP there would be the transdisciplinary themes. So in the theme of, let's
There's
say,
6, right?
yeah, so there's 6 middle school appropriate themes that help to guide these projects or these units that teachers would engage with their students in. And they're like 1 unit at a time, so it's really a 6 to 8 week unit. And if it goes terribly, there's a process for reflection and refinement built into, you know, the way IB curriculum is created. So there's always a cycle of reflection. And did it work? Why didn't it work? How can we improve or make it better? So it wouldn't be, ooh, this whole thing is a mess and we have to restart from the beginning. But it would be a process for planning it as well as reflecting whether or not it was successful.
And having been through this before, the daunting thing is that we're building it from scratch. The most exciting thing is that we're building it from scratch. We don't have to try to force IB onto an already prescribed scope and sequence or curriculum. We're creating it with the IB framework as the premise, along with Common Core.
But certainly IB programs exist in middle school, and it's not as if you're working in the dark.
No, I went through this process with a school
Right.
before.
Yeah.
So there are resources out there. There are other schools that have done this, and some have been nice enough to share some resources with us.
And that's what you did, right? We got the curriculum from El Segundo and we're switching that to our old standard. I'm sorry, we're kind of running over a little bit. Danielle, do you have any other questions?
My only question is assuming all of these goals are met with this timeline, is then the goal that by the 2022 school year we would be certified?
Yes, we would be an authorized IB World School, and then the following year we would have our reauthorization visit for the primary years program.
And also the second question I tricked you. Second question is if there are some asterisks next to some big ones, like language policy that is consistent with IB expectations, does that mean a second language? Or
So these are all things that we're going to have to submit as part of our authorization process.
Okay.
And yeah, it means we have to develop our own policies around academic honesty, which we do have for the primary years program, and we can just reinvent a little bit for the middle years program.
We have an existing language policy for the primary years program, so it needs to be adopted.
So a couple of things. I'm trying to get an idea of dates and deadlines. I understand there are these milestones, but is this managed with deadlines? I wasn't able to really find any. For example, summer curriculum writing, I assume that was done and had to be done in the summer, right? So,
Perfect. Correct.
So you see what I mean? So
Yes.
I imagine there are.
So that's the next step.
Okay.
The next step is taking this and sitting down with Angel and with Chris and creating these hard deadlines, specific tasks and who's responsible for what by when.
Right.
So that's the next step.
So that's, I think the board would be curious to make sure that this is running smoothly. I mean, ultimately, as Scott said on several occasions, this is a daunting task, and that we find out sooner than later if we need to allocate more resources to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting a very critical point. I'm not doubting in the expertise that they can get it done. I'm doubting, my question is, do we have enough time and resources to get it done? So that's what we need. You need to come to us if it's
without killing you, obviously.
Right. So I mean, there's certain things which are humanly possible and the others are not. And so what do we need to get done in order to get it done?
And I think that might come down to being creative a little bit with how we do things. Maybe the first few days of winter break, we offer some teachers to come in and do some curriculum writing.
Right.
And be able to supplement in those sort of creative ways.
Okay.
And we can keep the board apprised through my reports.
Perfect, thank you.
Every couple of months.
If there is nothing else, we will move on, and I will be very, very brief. I won't actually not get up, if that's all right.
Unacceptable.
Okay. So presentation today, we're not going to do a separate one for board training and development. I'd like to keep this very narrowly focused on charter school conferences and workshops. We spoke back in July about the need to improve our own expertise and our own background knowledge on charter schools. I think for most of us here, without Pete and Frank obviously not included in this group, this is my going into second year of the charter school board, and others as their first year. So went through conferences and workshops that are in the local area. I'll start at the bottom. There are two major conferences that I'm sure a few people in this room have heard about, and that's the Charter School Development Leadership Conference. That is scheduled to happen on December 2nd and 3rd in Anaheim, and then the larger one, which is the CCSA Conference, which is going to happen in March of next year. Now, these conferences are 2 to 3 day events. You have every major vendor, back office vendor, charter management organizations, great breakout sessions, great workshops, governance, leadership, fiduciary responsibilities, charter school finance, operations. Really, really powerful sessions that last 2 to 3 days, but also are very, very focused in attending some of these workshops. I can see the value that's there. However, some things to keep in mind is the CCSA conference, I think every other year, is down south, and this is the year that it is going to be in Southern California, so something to consider. The CSD conference, we are not a member of the Charter School Development group, but we are a member of CCSA. We're not right?
You guys could attend that. I mean, I'm a member of CS. I'm just saying.
I know we could attend.
There's no barrier to it.
There's no barrier, but it's just $25-30 more or something for non-members. But we are a member of the CCSA. That's something to think about. But what I do want to highlight, though, is there are great workshops that are happening throughout Los Angeles in the local area. 3 to 5 hours every day, and I've highlighted a few key ones which I think would be good for us to attend. One is called the Critical Issues Symposium, and it's about things that are affecting charter schools in the region. Obviously, the Prop 39 allocation is going to be one of the topics. They're given by YMC, EdTech, CSMC. There's a Charter Leadership Forum, typically happens in January, again by YMC and EdTech. Lasts about 5 hours. And then there's also things that may not apply to us, but it would. I think, Daniel, you asked a question about Prop 39. What are the mechanics of it? What are the requirements of it? It's a big part of our budget and our operations, and it happens every year on the first week of October because the applications are due in November. It's free, but it's great for leaders, administrators, executive directors to attend these workshops because, look, ultimately we can have someone come to our site and lecture to us on best practices on these topics. But what I found that's been very valuable is in these instances where you actually go into these workshops and you meet with fellow board members and you meet with other executive directors and you hear the war stories. It's a very, very different experience. So I mentioned this a few months ago. I'm going to come back to this group via email, not breaking the Brown Act regulations, to ask you for your time as these conferences come up to attend, to join me, and most likely Chris, who's probably going to attend as well, and even a few people from his organization, as we get closer to the point, and we'll send you all the information on it. I also ask that as a board member, we talk about a minimum commitment that we aim for at least one workshop a year, but we strive for 2. So, that being said, I will leave it to you and offer more information in the next coming weeks. Any questions? Pete?
So I would be opposed to attending any workshop that's offered by an organization that charges a fee. I mean, if it's a conference, that's a different thing. But this is like a cottage industry there is no evidence of any of this being, you know, it might sound good, but there is no evidence of any of this makes any difference in the success of the charter schools. So, I mean, if someone could demonstrate that, that would be useful information at the top. And I hate to be like the great sort of alignment, but you know, lots of people can say lots of things, and it isn't I mean, there's two aspects. There's the running a charter school thing, and you know, you follow all the rules and regulations, and that's kind of administrative, and you know, one can be more or less effective at that. And B, ultimately, what's more important is the student outcomes that the charter school is creating. And the evidence for charter schools is that charter schools are vastly better than non-charter schools. So there isn't a uniform way that someone can tell you, here's the secret way of doing it to make it all work wonderfully. Because otherwise we'd have such differences, and we just don't have that. You know, at conferences you might have some broader representation of experiences that would be useful. But like I said, anything that's done by people like this, I view as just a way of jumping onto the industry and making money.
So, here are my thoughts. I don't disagree with you. And just keep in mind, as far as the conferences are concerned, they're also, they're endorsed and paid for by lobbyist groups.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, no matter which industry you're in, you're always going to have some sort of influence. And, and the results are never going to be guaranteed. My personal experience in attending these kinds of events has not been that I'm swayed by a philosophy or by a product. It's more that shared value and that shared belief system of like-minded individuals that are there, and that sharing of knowledge across people of different backgrounds with common goals in the charter school field. So, in my experience, it's been very rewarding to understand, you know, sometimes I don't raise my hand in a board meeting when a lawyer's talking. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. But to hear that from different perspectives and to share those war stories has been invaluable. And part of my knowledge in the function of a board, governance and leadership, has been not just these sessions, but compounded by attending other board meetings in the local area of charter schools. So I felt that I've had to learn a lot very quickly, and that, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, that these guys are snake oil salesmen. They all are. I don't trust any of them. But
I'm not saying they are. I'm not saying that they are or aren't. I'm just saying I want you to take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly, but they're also not giving you, you know, attending these events. They're not giving you a solution. They're not giving you a final product. What they're saying is, hey, here's a new law. Think about it. Just in the example of Wayne here, who says, yeah, you know, it's got to be ADI compliant. And you know, every time I speak with a lawyer, lawyers are all about risk and risk mitigation and risk management. How likely are we that someone is having a teleconference and, you know, in a room that's not ADA compliant, you know, and we need to go talk to our lawyer about it? Of course, take it with a grain of salt. Sorry, go ahead.
Comment on in regards to expenses. If board members were to attend any of these functions, these are public funds. So on that notion is, you know, there is not like when you go on a corporate retreat and you know, and just expense the miles and, you know, and get the Diet Coke you get over. I'm not saying, you know, this is all out of your own pocket. You know, I'm just, in general, these are public funds. If there is a fee for it, for these meetings, it's probably reimbursable, but you have to be ultra careful, you know, when you attend. There's no there's no travel expense policy here if you attend these things. Just be careful when you do.
I think, thank you, Frank. I think, yes, that's important to note. And as far as fees associated to them, I am actually in the process. I want to get some feedback from this group. That there is a commitment that you will devote some time to it. And once I have that, then I will go back and make sure that those are at a minimum or non-existent.
So it's okay, I just add one more thing on the, sorry, Danielle. Maybe one more thing, just in regards to the fines. We got audited because somebody drank a beer at one of the events in San Diego. It got so granular that, you know, they look at this.
So we try to expense that?
try to expense it. We were starting this. Pete, we were starting the school. We didn't have any experience in these things, right?
Yeah.
So there's many moons ago, and it has to be ultra careful. So that's just my final comment. I apologize for.
Oh, no, no disrespect taken. So I do have a question about that. So I'm happy to commit, however, my term expires on June 1st or whatever that is. So for you to invest in me to go to a workshop in April and May, when I may not put these learnings into use in the 1 month that I have left on this board, I think is a little bit.
That's very pessimistic, first
odd.
of all.
We're not
Because
gonna get through a whole agenda,
It
so
is-
I mean, and it's almost 8 o'clock. So I just kind of want to put that out there that, you know, for a parent representative who's not a long-term board member, who may or may not be on the board in the future, I think it's a little bit different as far as the commitment that is expected.
I think that structurally what I'm looking for is we would talk about ideally 2 board members attending every year or 1, but alternating but I wanted to just have the conversation because I know there are strong opinions on training and I know there's strong opinions on time commitments, and I know we already take a lot of time from our professional schedules. But I also feel that this is one of the most important things that we can do as board members, because many of us have not been on the board of before.
And I'm gonna put in the time check, we're well
Thank you,
behind
sir.
time, so.
Okay. So we are.
Move us as quickly as we can, as
Thank
we have many things to go through yet.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the approval of the XED contract for the 2019-2020 school year. As I understand it, Chris, we postponed this conversation from June of last year, and we went to a month-to-month as of today still, or
We've been working gratis.
without a contract. Okay.
The contract needs to be, it's a requirement, an audit requirement, it needs to be absolutely, so, but, we need to get a motion, and then we have a second, and then we can discuss it. I motion.
Second.
I move. I'm sorry, I move.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
No, we have to have a discussion, right? Do we have to have a discussion?
Is there a discussion?
I second. Is there a discussion? You wanna have a discussion?
No discussion.
I don't have any part.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. There you go. You can go home, Ryan.
Yeah.
All right. Finance committee reports. Chris and Frank.
I move to approve, I need a second then, the September financials. Do I have a second? Then we can have, second. Now we can have discussion.
Sir?
Am I? So I just I draw your attention. First item, please take a look at the check register at the last page. Please spend some time to review it, and please let me know if there are any questions, and please direct them to us. The finance committee has reviewed it and deemed it to be okay, but it is your obligation to review the check register.
And these were in the Dropbox as well.
Yeah. If there are no questions, then let's review. There's 2 other documents. One is the dashboard. Couple of things, maybe the most important thing, if you look at the forecast income loss, 314 or 315 projected versus 401. So there's a slight improvement. The movements in the income statement and the expenses are the highlights are written on the second page, income revenue, what was higher, what was lower. I think they're self-explanatory. The other point I'd like to make is that subject contingent upon the making the budget the projected cash flow on page 1. It's projected to be $915,000 almost, versus a budget of $652, which is a positive number. And then the last item I'd like to point out is the continued good ADA. And 88 percentage, which is still higher than 96, but we're coming into flu season, so it's going to go down. It's expected to go down overall, but the overall enrollment is 421 versus 435, which is the reason why we are having a certain shortfall. Ryan, you want to add anything to that?
No, but one thing that I thought was interesting, especially as I watched you review, is that whenever we have these presentations and they're spaced out, and one thing that I highlighted and used as my point of discussion in the finance committee meeting was what changed from the last time we spoke, right? And there is a section here in the income statement portion that shows what the changes were from last month's presentation. So if you look here, you can see that the local control funding formula got better by $9,000. In federal revenue, that got better by about $26,000 for the forecast. So those are the sections that I would look at if I were you guys and want to know, well, hey, what changed from last month? Is there anything I should know?
Okay, I'd like to point out two things, two marginal numbers. One, the structural imbalance of the current budget. We know we are investing into it. This is a year of investment, and we are contemplating we are investing 2 years into our program. Our total revenue per ADA is about $11,000. Without grants and fundraising, it's about $9,800, $9,700. Oh, I'm sorry. It's $11,000 and it's $9,900 without almost $10,000. So it's $1,000, $1,200 is in fundraising and grants. Well, our total expenses are almost $12,000 per ADA. So there's a structural imbalance in there in this year's budget.
All right. Is there further discussion? Danielle? Pete?
No, I'm good.
All right. All in favor to approve the financials for September?
Aye.
Aye, her?
Thank you.
I would like to just add the conversation about the plan for the 2020 and 2021 budget and 3-year forecasts. I imagine the finance committee met. Have you guys come up with discussed preliminarily what that looks like?
Dr. Jones has developed a budget roadmap.
So at the finance committee, we discussed where we basically want to go, and obviously the structural deficit that exists in this year's budget is concerning, and we need to address that as we look towards building the next budget. My suggestion to the finance committee was that we look at create 3 budget scenarios: good, status quo, and bad, for lack of better terms. And I believe that they need to be tied to facilities, what we're able, how many classrooms we're going to be able to have. And that could be classrooms on one site, it could be on 2 sites that are Prop 39, it could be on 2 sites, one Prop 39 and one not. I mean, there's lots of options. We won't be making that decision until May. So we need to have it clear what are our options, and what does that mean if we only have 16 classrooms? to be able to do what we do, or if we have 18 classrooms, or if we have 20 classrooms of general classrooms, and then figuring out from there what would be our projected enrollment. Are there classes we need to squish together and move from 3 classes to 2 classes? Those are the kind of decisions we'll need to make. And so the first step is, between now and Christmas, is that the administrative team is getting together to block out what they think are reasonable starting points. And then that discussion gets brought to the finance committee. And the finance committee will be looking at that in January and February. That we are, by March, have reasonable amounts that we think are something that are reasonable budgets without a structural deficit at the various levels of bad, status quo, and good. And then leading to the preparation for May of making a decision. June, we will need to have 2 different meetings because of the LCAP requirements that were mentioned. Well, let's talk about Brown Act, but we are required to have an LCAP public hearing this year in June, which we didn't used to have to do. So we will need to have 2 June meetings to be able to make that happen. But it's really April and May is the crux of decision making that we will have to do.
So I'd like to just point out a couple of things. So this is very, very important to the organization, just because the board needs to be kept up to date and apprised of the budget. So we are not in this cycle of, I guess, being held hostage to a decision that's made at the last minute. So it is something that I'm going to be looking for every board meeting. I'd like to agendize it to make sure that you guys are on track and that there is a plan and there is a palpable budget that will be presented to this board. So the second question and I guess point is and Pete, you raised this at our last discussion for the budget, which is that school budgets tend to be very fixed because a lot of the things you can't really change. I can understand that facilities is a big part of it, that we may have some flexibility on. But I think the other question to explore is curriculum. What makes sense and what doesn't. And those conversations, I think, will also potentially lead to, a budget model that could be palpable. So I would encourage you to not just look at facilities, but any other major variables that can shift, expenses and increase income. Yes.
So, yeah, but what are the deliverables you're trying to see every month from the finance committee?
I would just like to make sure, generally speaking, that there is a timeline, that these conversations are being had, that whether we're talking about facilities or we're talking about changes to curriculum, that it is methodical, it has the consensus of your committee, and that ultimately, my first point, which is that we're not getting a budget on June 7th and asked to decide on it, that night.
No.
Yeah, so, that's all. Sorry, Ryan.
No problem. I agree with every point you made, and also Dr. Jones. Just to be clear as far as expectations go, all of this information gathering and planning can begin as early as right now.
Yep.
However, I just want you to be aware that in the charter school world, the official kind of like budget season. No, not June.
Sure.
It's March. So it's typically around the time of the CCSA conference where revenue rates for the next school year are beginning to be discussed. And then it's not until May when the governor starts to. So I just wanted to be clear. So there's some revenue components to the budget process that won't be available until later on. But absolutely all of the expense assumptions and scenarios around that, scenarios around enrollment, all of those can start beginning, but I just wanted you to know that there is some constraints on information.
And I accept that, and Chris has told me that on numerous occasions.
Okay.
And I am only looking at the expense side of it. So, all right, thank you. All right. Moving on to the next item, approval of the closure of Wells Fargo brokerage account.
Yeah, I move to close the brokerage account.
Okay, discussion.
I need a second.
Second? I'll second. Discuss. You wanna tell us a little bit about it, Frank?
We have received, many moons ago, I think, multiple years, a stock donation, and we needed to have an investment account. So, yeah, and so we have $10,000 roundabout, right, $10,000 or $11,000, a stock donation we wanna liquidate and wanna close this account. We still have a Morgan Stanley account where we could receive stock donations.
Okay.
So this account is obsolete, and all we need is a resolution to close it. And then the stocks will be liquidated and go into a cash reserve.
Do we wanna close the accounts right now as far as like liquidating these stocks, or they have any,
I was gonna say that when they were donated before the first day of school, it was, I think, I don't know who was managing the account at that point, but it was, I think, one mutual fund that was donated, and then there was a portion of cash that's already been liquidated. I mean, it's just cash sitting in there.
No.
So it's not like a portfolio of a lot of stocks. I think it's one mutual fund and then a portion of already cash.
Yeah.
It's like 50-50.
do we know what the yield's been on it for the last like 2 years or so? The yield on the mutual fund for the last couple years?
I think you've been losing a marginal amount.
There you go.
It's a marginal amount. Yeah. It's just been kind of staying stagnant. Yeah. And the main motivator for closing this account is it's not linked to the overall Wells Fargo relationship. And each month we have to wait until the 15th to receive a physical hard copy of a statement, and that one statement alone has been the reason for delay in closing of the month, because we can't see what the yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So there's less control over that account. There's no real risk with it. It's just kind of this nagging thing that slows
Point bookkeeping. Okay. All in favor to close the Wells Fargo account, brokerage account? Aye. All right. Moving on. Approval of opening an account with California Credit Union.
I move to regarding 3. Give it a second. We have done some research, and I've asked Joe Franco from the Finance Committee, our newest member of the Finance Committee, to summarize the reasoning why we want to open an account with the California Credit Union. Joe, can you help us on this?
Sure. So so we assessed 3 different options. We had Pacific Western Bank, Umpqua, and California Credit Union. And look at California Credit Union, just had the easiest local access to a bank, had the best rates for us on deposits, checks, etc. And they have a really good charter program in terms of just deposits, lending, and checks and cash pickup. And it's a credit union, so very, very accessible and easy to talk to.
It also allows us that we can provide access to our, to the members of the credit union, right? And to our teachers, when it comes to car financing and all that kind of stuff. So they get the typical benefit.
Oh, and it streamlines credit cards. So you have an account and a credit card on the same platform. You don't have to go to separate banks for credit cards.
Charge card or credit card?
Credit cards. Yeah, because the idea is not to have multiple people with a debit card with access to your cash.
Right, of course.
You have everybody has a credit card instead with a predetermined limit.
It is also the main reason is we ultimately want to close the Wells Fargo, want to discontinue the Wells Fargo relationship. As we wanted to open a line of credit, which we may or may not need.
Ryan, if you could share a little bit about why the Wells Fargo relationship hasn't been as smooth like it is.
Yeah, so Wells Fargo is a major bank. Charter school business is not a big moneymaker or a client that's really on their radar. So one of the main motivators is the relationship piece. having someone dedicated to the school that's accessible and available to help should a question occur. Not an ever-changing, relationship manager that is hard to get on the phone, not having to go through an automated system, a system and to push buttons to get someone on the line, but rather to have someone that you can count on. California Credit Union provides that. All three of the banks that we talked about provide that service. But California Credit Union has so many tools available not only to the school but also to the employees of the school. They're a credit union, so they have more resources available to lend to the school. For example, with lines of credit, when they're reviewing your financials, they're backed by the state, so they're able to provide a little bit more leeway for a school that's in more need, but necessarily doesn't look great on paper at that current time. They're in the they have a whole section that's in the business of making sure that your school is successful. With Wells Fargo, we haven't felt that. Not to say that we couldn't, but we haven't felt that.
Who are some of the other schools that are members?
There is Watts Learning Center is a member. I don't know all of their members. A lot of EdSed clients. I'm trying to think of one that you may be aware of.
Okay, so, but you are, in fact, by approving this motion, we are moving our banking from Wells Fargo?
No, we're not. We're just opening it.
We're opening. So
we're opening. We're not closing it at this stage. We're opening a membership with the California Credit Union, and then the ultimate goal is to actually move the banking relationship over once open.
Okay. So when would that happen?
As I shared in the committee, that to open an account we can do right away.
Mm-hmm.
To migrate a relationship, it takes time, because there's revenue that we get from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, from LAUSD. Those are routed to the old bank account. It's a 30 to 90 day process to change that. Currently, payroll is all tied to the current account. In order to migrate that, I wouldn't do it until all of the funding sources are now coming into the new account, so that we're definitely, backed by our money.
So who would facilitate that change? Would that be all EdSed that would do that?
It's typically EdSed, and if you'd like, you can delegate, the executive director and director of operations to assist. But typically,
we're looking for someone to just do it. So
I just do it, but I don't do it in like a silo. I'll do it in.
No, I understand.
With updates to Dr. Jones, and it's very quick. I'm used to handling that.
Do we have? So you mentioned building relationships. Who would be our contact with California Credit Union?
Well, they have a good number of people, but there's a lady named Vivian Fang, who is a big name that a lot of charter school leaders go to, and she's always accessible. She's located here in the Los Angeles area. I think she's just in the valley, but close, like in Sherman Oaks. Not exactly sure. But she's the main contact that the school would need should they want to reach out to anyone.
I think what I'm looking for is, I think it's in the organization's interest to always be the bigger fish in a small pond. And that would, I'm not looking for an account manager that's going to manage our account. I'm looking for to build a relationship with a senior manager for the organization and sort of lay out, what we're about, who we are. So if this is that person, then I think it would make sense for Frank, Chris, and possibly myself to meet them and talk to them about a commitment and a long-term relationship.
Sure. And would that be a board meeting session?
No, I think it's more,
finance committee, or just you guys informally meet?
I think us informally meeting. Frank, do you?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Honestly, I want to meet with that person, but it's up to you. For me, it's as access to a credit line. That's the most important thing, because it's a cash flow liquidity thing.
Yeah.
And I really don't care who our banking relationship is. It's that ease of doing business and getting potential line of credit if we were to ever go into a cash flow crunch in order to pay payroll. That's it, and I don't care whether we're the biggest fish or the smallest fish. I care about the credit line. It's just black or white for me.
So they're gonna wanna come to the school and visit, they're gonna wanna talk to the school leaders, they're gonna wanna talk to the employees to, let them know the benefits that they can offer them. And they're absolutely willing and probably eager to meet board members, so if you also want to come or set something up, easy, no problem.
No, I think it's that, look, it's obviously these are very black and white, but that's why we go with small banks, that's why we deal with small banks,
Yeah.
is to have that relationship, and whether, our balance sheet is looking good or sideways, it's the thing.
There's a different process of underwriting with the credit union rather than compared to a regular stock registered bank. The underwriting is probably a little bit more backed, as Ryan said, by the state, and so a little bit more lenience, not lenience, but leeway for both sides, and I think that's important. If we were to go apply for $100,000 or $250,000 line of credit with Wells Fargo, I think we're in for a lot of work.
All right, Danielle, anything further? Nope. All right, then all in favor of opening the account with California Credit Union?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approval of the independent auditor's report, Chris.
Okay.
Motion. I move.
Go ahead.
Motion and second.
Aye.
Each year when the unaudited actuals are compiled in August, they are then audited. And so the results of this audit were positive, and that there was unqualified, which is a good thing. It's basically it's taking the numbers that we had and saying that they were legitimate, and it's of course part of our what we must do annually to make sure that we are doing what we say. So if you recall, we came out as 182,000 to be good in our close. This is then verifying that is exactly what happened.
Yeah, so the independent auditor not only, audits the financials to make sure that we booked everything correctly, but they also audit to make sure that the programs that you're participating in, that you're in compliance. That you're in compliance with the amount of instructional minutes a school should provide to students. That your average daily attendance was calculated correctly. That there's no issues with any of those things. And what I just wanted to point out to the board is on page 24 is where you would typically see any reconciliation issues with our financials and what they're saying our financials should be. And as Dr. Jones said, they had no adjustments to our financials as presented, which is good. The clean audit, and then the other thing that verifies the clean audit statement that Dr. Jones just said, on page 33 is where they test and state if they found any material weaknesses or issues with our or deficiencies with our process. They found none. That's where he said it's an unmodified opinion. They have no problem with your guys' stuff. The next page, it says that there is no findings, and this is the clean audit statement. No findings. The next page, no findings with state awards, and page 36. It's just saying that there were no prior year findings. So in the event that there is a finding, it lives with you for the next year as well. You guys don't have any findings.
Not from last year.
Not from last year.
Going forward.
All right, all in favor to approve the independent auditor's report?
You want to maybe question that? The finance committee recommends.
Questions? All in favor? Aye. Okay, certification of board compliance review, Chris.
Okay, that was met with Yasir, and as board president, he needs to monitor that we are preparing for board compliance review. We met last week, and we signed off on that. We had been preparing things, and we will continue. This is in preparation for February 13th, when we have our visit. And so we need to have it in board minutes that he's had that check. This is the secondary one to, I had one earlier in October where I take a look as executive director.
I'd just like to point out the items that I saw that were not ready to present to me at the time were the checking of the board member form 740, sorry, to make sure. I'm sorry? I know, and I know he didn't know that we all did, but I know they were submitted in August, but he's compiling them and double checking to make sure. I actually remember having a conversation with Danielle about it, and then Biggie talking to Margie about it in an August meeting to make sure that they were submitted. But that was the only thing I'd seen, so I've signed a contingent on getting that document in place.
So you don't need ratification of your signature, right? Just approval?
Yeah.
Just approval. Because it was contingent. Okay, I got it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm ready to. If you want to call the vote, I'm ready.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well,
we didn't have a motion. I move.
I second. All in favor?
Okay.
We are postponing the approval.
Employee handbook, we could table that
for next.
And it'll come, you'll see it there, well in advance of reading.
Calendar topics for next board meeting, and I wish Margie was here, so I could tell her you and Pete were wrong. We needed a meeting in December. You guys didn't want to do it.
Well, that's your definition of need,
so some of the things to review.
Don't you have your list up there?
I do.
I won't be here for that meeting, I'll be on a plane, so I won't be able to
So
call either.
December 16th is not in stone, so we can pick another date if that's okay.
Because we just did the audit, that's the only thing with the December 15th requirement.
Well, the 15th is Sunday,
So it would have been anyway.
it defaults to the 16th.
But the
which is
first
Monday.
interim report can be done, that's fine. It doesn't have that same.
No, it can be done in January, it can be done whenever. If you'd like to, you can do it in December certainly, but you don't have to.
Okay.
When is our January meeting? January 31st? January 21st?
January 27th, yeah.
So one of the things is the biennial performance review for our executive director. Update on the biennial administrative leadership team review, our performance. Biennial teacher improvement report. So this is Chris's pulse of where we are with our teachers, their professional development, their improvement roadmap, and then the first interim report, and then if we could have a 30-minute discussion, limited time constraint on site funding. So Danielle, December 16th is not the date, so I'm open to.
It doesn't matter. I'm here anyway. I have jury duty.
Is it possible to do the week before, the Monday before?
It doesn't matter. I'm here. I don't intend to. Oh, except what is the week before? Is the
9th.
The 9th.
Oh, I'm traveling that. I'm only traveling one. But that's fine. The week before.
No.
Probably.
Probably?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. When?
The 9th?
I'm back on the 6th. Yeah, which is a Friday.
Will I have to do that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you already got
know
one.
if I'm available or not?
It doesn't matter. You can't vote on it, but you should be there.
But you're going to be seated at that day because you already got one vote.
Wow. Thank you for your support.
So December 9th?
December 9th, everybody's good?
Yeah.
From a mechanical standpoint, if you could make that a regular board meeting, not a special.
Yes.
Just 3 days notice?
In the minutes today that we're setting a regular board meeting.
For December 9th.
For December 9th. Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
I try to have
It
a
should
few
be
special
regular.
meetings as Awesome.
Will the official regular board meeting calendar be updated to reflect
It
that?
should be.
Good, just because the auditors always ask for it and they're gonna say, well, hey, I don't see this
Right,
regular
right.
board meeting on the initial one, so just make sure you.
Yep. All right, what do you want to do?
Just so you know.
That being said, we,
New business.
oh, yes, sorry, new business. Anything, thank you, Ryan.
I just want to bring 2 items. They don't necessarily have to go on this board meeting agenda within 21 days. But I'd like to bring forward, we need an investment policy. Ryan, is he gone? Yeah?
Investment policy.
We need an investment policy so that we can legally make a decision whether we're going to pick money market funds or, treasury bonds
Or exchange traded funds or something.
or futures and options on the Chicago pork belly exchange. So we can only do so many things, but we need to have an investment policy, and we should bring something forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
It should only be the stock market.
Would that come out of the finance committee?
That needs to come out of the finance committee, but I want to agendize it, that we actually then not have the 100,000 which we're lying in the Morgan Stanley just sit there.
Can I ask, do we want to do that in December or put it to January?
I would imagine you guys would want to probably meet and make a recommendation.
I think we need to meet, there is a template which we can look through it and say, this is the template, and I brought this forward many, many moons ago and it didn't go anywhere. But it's a template. It's a template which is in line which would state is required. I think we need to look at it, bring it forward, and maybe just you guys then can take a look at it and then can see whether we can adopt it or whether you can take certain elements off.
I would prefer that you give us a clean version. That says this is our recommendation, and these are the things we thought about.
Okay, we can do that.
And we can do that December or January. We'll either December or January.
Right. So for discussion, that's the one item, and then the other item is I expect a shortfall in fundraising. I do.
Do you want to have a discussion?
I want to have a discussion. The reason I'm asking is how do we plan if we don't do anything now? But is there anything we can do now in order to close it? So I want to have a broader discussion about how we're going to close the fundraising gap. And potentially not every board member, it's not for every board member, but for example, if we look for sponsorship for our gala, who is circulating what in what list, and who is, is Danielle doing it or am I doing it? Pete may not be comfortable with it or Margie. So let's have a discussion about the potential shortfall and what the board can do in order to fill it. We could discuss this on a fundraising committee first, with some action items and then potential action items, and then bring it to the board for the next meeting.
So December, put on
the
finance, which I was going to be doing as an ED report. We could make it a separate agenda item.
Yeah.
And then I'll bring some folks from the fundraising committee. As well for that.
Maybe bring them to the finance committee. So if I had to pick between 1 or 2 items, I would pick this one to go on the December item because it gives us more time to respond to certain shortfall. We have more time. I don't want to push this into January.
So if I can also point out that we need to have a finance committee the week after Thanksgiving in order to because we're a week shorter of time because we moved everything back. So maybe that Monday, the 9 minus 7 is the 2nd. So Monday the 2nd, if that is a possibility for a finance committee meeting.
I'm here. I'm leaving the 3rd probably. And come back to the 6th.
So that would be perfect. Let's do it before you leave. So Monday the 2nd for finance committee.
Anything else for new business? Pete? No. Okay, then the board will now convene, closed session.
It should be pretty brief, but we can do it. Is there anybody staying here or should we stay here?
Let's stay here because otherwise it's too much of a logistical effort. If we can ask the public to leave for that closed session, that would be great.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
No problem. Thank you.
Kathy, always we missed you for the pledge.
Oh, sorry.
I know, it's okay.
Try to fill it in.
Frank's just not
I
as
know
good.
that was my job.
It's not your job.
It's my
It's
job.
No, you're. I just like when you do it with the arms and the. You know, Frank is just
Well-
very mechanical.
I can make it into a dance. Like the Macarena version of the.
Yeah, it's 5:30. Right there.
But not Casey or Scott, you guys can go, so.
Earlier is better for me. Just saying. Okay.
In terms of the recording, I'm gonna stop it.
Yep.
When we report out to closed session, should I start it again?
No.
Report out.
Yeah, I'll just be.
Okay, let me grab,
Yeah.
just gather my belongings now.
Alright, if everyone wants to start shutting down, and we'll close the doors.
I'll close the door here.
There should be like a 7-inning stretch here.
Yeah, I know. That's great.
3 hours in here.
Well, having the Brown Act earlier,
Oh, I know,
and that
last year
meeting
was-
went longer
last year
than
was
we've ever
colorful,
had,
so it kept you
so.
awake at least.
That's a good.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been bad without the Brown Act.